All right, guys, here we go. So we're doing a slight orbit. We are going to be Pluto, except we're the size of Saturn. Because I'm a big guy. Get the joke? Isn't that funny? Isn't that type of humor so funny, guys? But yeah, I'm interested in this. People sent this to me in my Discord. It was called Cancel. Well, it is still called Cancel Culture Does Not Work. Changed my mind. It's from Destiny as he experiments with different type of content. I'm assuming this is a little bit older. Like, it seems like Destiny's been taking a little bit of a break lately. He may not have a lot of content in the old backlog. You know, he might be doing a lot of tours and stuff. He's very busy. He's a very busy guy. Okay, but anyway, let's get it going.
Culture.
Nazis on
Cancel culture.
Nazis on campus, yeah.
Real men should be more feminine.
Curious about the sign
Real men, what?
you got with the gender.
That seems a little counterintuitive, right? Isn't it supposed to be? Yes, it's the size of Jupiter. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Incredible. The size of Jupiter. Anyway, it seems counterintuitive. I thought it was supposed to just be about different people having different, you know, I don't know, like feminine, masculine. We're all men, am I right?
Gender thing.
Change my mind.
I want to talk about cancel culture.
How is this like? What is this turn into like Metal Gear Solid?
Gotcha.
And how it works.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially,
Just so you know, cancel culture is terrible.
AJ super chatted $1.99. Papa, did you ever think Red Pill would be okay? W Nazis.
I don't even know what that means. No? Yes? Would be okay. What does that mean? Thank you for the donation. Anyway, here's the problem with cancel culture. All right, first of all, fundamentally speaking, cancel culture is basically online social policing. It is social policing. We have an issue with our criminal justice system not performing the way that it probably should perform. In general, there's constant issues, but even that is better than the way that we socially police. What ends up happening is we all will engage in our anchor bias, which is basically, or most of us do. Of course, not me. I'm better than you. Just kidding. But it's common for people to, the first bit of information they see, they agree with, they think that's the accurate way to go forward, and they instantaneously emotionally react to that. And then after that fact, once more information comes out that disagrees with that narrative because, you know, it's factually incorrect, they still have to shift the goalpost and maintain that. Their original energy, they have to double down and they shift the goalpost. And this is something that happens everywhere on the internet. I think the City Bike Karen situation is a really good example of that. There are plenty of other examples of that, where this woman got canceled for being racist because she had a fight with some kid over a bike. I mean, the reality is like she was a pregnant woman who came off of a shift and she wanted the bike. The other young man wasn't using the bike, but he wanted to hog the bike without using it. I don't think he left till like 40 minutes later. Either way, neither of them are bad people. They're both just doing bad things. She decided to be annoying and yell, and then he just was trying to hog the bike. But we called her a racist and tried to cancel her and get her fired from her job, when the appropriate response was to go like, I don't care. Right? Neither of them should have any damage to them. And that's how this works. And it's a lot of people who are engaging in virtue bullying. It's them wanting to be like, I'm a good person, guys. I'm going to attack somebody and I'm going to make you perceive them as a bad person. A lot of these social media people, a lot of people who do shit like this, you know, your Tizians, your what is it called, that Dinesh guys, your Aunt Karens, your ex-Rexorcists or whatever. These people are not good people. They engage in virtue bullying. They want to harm people. They want to cause harm to people, and they don't want to have a positive impact. They want you to look at them and go, these are good people. They're not objective. They're not unbiased, and they don't care about the social narratives that they pretend to care about. It's about virtue bullying. It's about feeling justified in bullying. Cancel culture doesn't work because there's never been a proportionate punishment to a particular thing that somebody has done wrong on the internet. It never happens. That's a problem. It's as if you get, you know, you go to prison for life for stealing a candy bar from a convenience store. And that's how cancel culture works. Even with the Nick Merckx thing, where I disagreed with Nick Merckx, and that wasn't a super cancel thing, but I don't think that it was appropriate to just take away his skins from the COD shop. I think they would have done better at the very least of trying to reach out to him, the company, and be like, hey, can we do some kind of a seminar? You know, we used to have to do, meetings all the time when I worked a real job, right? You would have to go to like sensitivity training. I'm not saying he would have taken it. I'm just saying I feel like that's an example of a right direction to go into. So let's go.
Actually, cancel culture, I mean, I feel like in a very empirical sense. I mean, if you take cancel culture as simply being a reaction that is meant to effectively end a person's professional career, I would say that it has worked. In the first example, a reaction that is critical sense. I mean, if you take cancel culture as simply being a reaction that is meant to effectively end a person's professional career, I would say that it has worked.
Well, it certainly has.
In the first example that comes to mind pretty readily is, I believe it was a comedian by the name of Kramer, right? He played on Seinfeld, and I recall, and it was a very specific event where he said on stage,
The Laugh Factory, yeah.
yeah, he said on stage, like, he said the N-word, and his career pretty much ended there. And since then, I feel like Kramer's comedic career has pretty much never actually recovered from.
Sure, I don't care about this. When I think cancel culture, I don't think about that. I think about like actual bad things. Like, well, that is an actual bad thing. I think of like not bad things people get canceled for. That I totally see why, you know? So a little different, I would say.
That event. So in that sense, I feel like cancel culture is very much it does work.
Right, but
Okay, so when I think of the goal of cancel culture, I feel like the goal of cancel culture isn't necessarily to eliminate like one person from society. I feel like the goal of cancel culture is to make certain ideas untenable. That if you have like a certain belief system or a certain set of ideas, that you know the culture is going to come after you to kind of weed those ideas out. So
I don't think that's what cancel culture wants to do at all. I think it's a bunch of people who want to be hateful, you know? I don't think that... I mean, if that was what it was trying to do, okay, I guess. But there's no, like, social conversation or education for, like, bad behavior on the internet. I think... Why are you following me? I think it's just about trying to cancel people and causing harm. So...
what is Kramer's name? Richard? Is it Michael Richards?
Yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah, Michael Richards. For his career getting canceled, like those are ideas that I think most people in society, like 90% plus, are like, this is beyond the pale. You can't call people the N-word on stage because you get really mad. Nobody supported that. No. But I think the issue is that cancel culture is more broadly applied to like a wide array of ideas that are like, some of them are pretty socially popular. So I would say like a lot of the red pill stuff, say like Andrew Tate, for instance, or a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump was saying. I feel like in 2016, there was this really weird phenomenon that happened where Donald Trump got on stage and he said a lot of insane shit. And there was a lot of people like me in the country, liberals, who ostensibly thought these ideas were eliminated from society. Nobody really believes this stuff. Nobody would say this stuff about Muslims, about Mexicans. Like, this can't be the case. And then he won the election. And I think that was a big wake-up moment. It's like, okay, I don't think we've done enough to actually change people's minds on a lot of these ideas, but instead we become obsessed and fixated on the canceling and banning from all the platforms. And what we've done is we've created this like second world where all these people are living, and none of them are actually being persuaded out of the like insane shit they think.
So
yeah, for sure. That's one of those things where there's a lot of people who think particular ideas, even if they're wrong, and you have to kind of meet people where they're at. You know, like, listen, with like the LGBTQ obnoxious shit where everybody's calling like gay people groomers and shit, it's obviously wrong, but you need to engage with that. Like, that's like the Nick Merckx conversation. I already talked about that thing where he alluded to it a little bit, but he's not trying to be hateful. It's just like ignorant rhetoric, and it needs to be met in like a, hey, what's up, man? Like, you know, this is what's communicated. This is what's this. The people that are like, I don't think that children should be introduced to gay people. They shouldn't be introduced to sexuality. It's like, okay, but how come you don't have that same application to heterosexuality? Like, if you see a straight couple kiss in public, nobody cares. But if it's a gay couple that kisses in public in front of a kid, all of a sudden it's a huge issue. Like, God forbid, like I'm at the park. Because that's what it comes down to. Like, I don't want my teachers putting a picture on the desk of their husband if they're gay, and it's like, well, what if they were straight? Oh, I don't care. It's like, that's, you know, you meet it there, and then you get to like, you slowly get to understand where that person is coming from, and how you can explain to them why what they're saying is wrong. But you have to meet the idea. You can't just shame the idea of existence, or else you're having a net loss impact.
So pretty much what you're saying is that the effect that Trump being banned from Twitter doesn't really work, is what you're saying, right?
Not too much. I don't feel like it.
No.
Or it might help to curb the individual a little bit, but I don't think it does anything for the overall ideology.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you not say that a lot of the ideology, would you say that Trump was more a symptom, or did he spur the ideology himself? And
I mean, I think it's almost like both. right? Like, I mean, I think that Trump became president because he was speaking to some ideas that people had, and he's just kind of reinforced that and put it into the public. Lower the video volume. Is that loud? Okay, I can lower the video volume, but sure. Here you go.
I view things as
That's why I
push
love
and
Jon
pull,
Stewart
with
too,
him
yeah.
largely being a symptom, but also being a little bit of a push as well. So symptomatically, like, our country existed in a way that allowed Trump to exist, and then once Trump exists, he pushes a little bit and makes it a little bit worse, right? So I don't know if our country would have accepted January 6th before Trump, but with Trump in office, that becomes more acceptable, basically. Yeah,
Well,
bit of a push and pull.
I think it is still effective to like be able to like deplatform people. And those
Sure, it can be effective to deplatform people. The problem is that, like, we have no standard for what is and isn't worth deplatforming, you know? And so that's where the problem comes into play. You know, when we use these really big examples like Donald Trump, they get a little muddy. Like, when it comes to, like, Nick Fuentes, I'm fine with him being deplatformed because, like, his ideas aren't, he's literally racist and thinks that sleeping with black people is like the same as sleeping with dogs. He thinks that they're both degenerate acts, which is insanely hateful and just wrong, objectively. But then a lot of times this shit just happens over random shit. People get canceled for like random ass shit over and over again on the internet. Everything, like, especially, you know, it just goes crazy. So
those types of individuals. It is.
How do you have the conversation in an online space? I've had these combos in real life far better. You know, that's a good question. I think it depends on the situation. Like, again, with Nick Merckx, it's just like an invitation to talk to him. But when it comes down to like that City by Karen situation, the solution needs to be people not feeding into the narratives. There's constant narratives out there that, like, if left untouched, people will like lean into. And so people have to like fight against those narratives, but not in a way to be opportunistic. Like, there are people that are calling like that black kid that hogged the bike like a fucking criminal. Like, they were like trying to like it was going. They were just being racist. Like, they were just there were people who were like, oh, white woman, she must have been being racist to the black guy. And then there were people that were like, oh, he's black, he must be a thug. Like, those were going both ways. Like, everybody's going hyperbolic and extreme in like each direction, right? I mean, it's just, I don't know the exact solution. You know, better discourse about these topics. You know, media outlets not fucking taking advantage of it. We just need better people talking about this stuff.
It is effective in the sense that once they lose their voice, they're unable to spur those ideas, encourage people into like into proliferating those ideas. I think it is pretty effective once you cut their voice and those ideas are no longer able to be voiced. Then it does have an effect on, like,
yeah, but it doesn't mean it's a good effect. Like, if the idea that's getting cut is like, oh my god, a certain group of people is not as good as another group, a lot of times, like, yes, cutting that idea is going to happen. Like, if you have literal neo-Nazis getting banned, like, it's not going to be a big deal. But then when you have like more populist ideas, and it doesn't mean make them right, but if you have those people get you know, canceled or not be able to express that, even if they're wrong, that's where the conversation ends, you know? Because a lot of times if you're speaking to one person, you could be speaking to a lot of people if they all have a similar perspective on the topic.
like the overall culture.
It can a little bit. So this is kind of like the thing that I'm scared of is as we move more aggressively in this direction, you're starting to see people getting bigger on these alternative platforms where we have no reach. So Rumble is a really good example of an alternative platform. Parts of YouTube could be a good example. And it feels like what's happening is this kind of like canceled crowd. It used to be like the intellectual dark web. Now it's like Joe Rogan and friends and all these people. They're getting larger and larger. And I feel like we're going to hit a breaking point to where you can't just ban and censor these people anymore. And they're going to have all these platforms to talk on. And now you've like completely lost the ability to communicate with them. You said you did IR, right?
That's true.
Have you, did you follow when we talked about cutting Russia off from SWIFT?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, I'm not an international relations guy, so this might be really stupid. But one thing that's really scary from my point of view in cutting Russia off from everything, including SWIFT. Now, they didn't get completely
Well, I would feel bad for the people that live in Russia because they're just going to get in more angry and hateful, you know?
cut out of SWIFT, right, for transaction-related energy. But the scary thing about cutting Russia off from SWIFT and then everything is that what if Russia could survive with just their little Eurasian community and they were totally fine? If that happened, we'd be in a really weird position in the West where we're like, okay, Russia's actually okay despite all of our sanctions.
I mean, I'm more worried about like the actual people that live in Russia, cutting them off from particular services. I'm not super educated on what exactly they're talking about, but cutting them off from particular services doesn't like help those individuals. It just excludes them from the world. It tells them that the world doesn't care about them and that their only choice is to be on the side of like the Russian government. And I think that is, to me, that would be a bit more dangerous than anything else. right? That's where I'm like apprehensive about.
Now they can operate completely independently from us, and we have like no leverage whatsoever anymore on them. And I worry with the cancel culture stuff that's going to happen. That like these alternative platforms will build up, and someone will be like, okay, I don't believe in vaccines. I hate trans people. Minorities, and I'm going to go make a living over here, and I'm actually fully supported and okay doing it. I've got my Black Rifle coffee sponsorship, I've got my Rumble stream, my whatever platform, and now they're like untouchable and unreachable. And that's like the scary world I feel like we're headed for. Sorry,
yeah, that's that's a pretty good point. The case with Russia, I think it is of course a little bit more different because I think the intention with like being able like those economic sanctions and stuff like that is less so to be a it's more to cause like a domestic disruption. In the case of like making Putin have like less support domestically for his policy.
But what if Russia could survive despite all the sanctions and completely cut off from SWIFT?
Well, I don't think that was the original intention at all. Because I don't think anyone, when they cut SWIFT off, they knew Russia would survive. They would just be a lot worse off, and that's pretty much the only. I'm pretty sure that was the only real.
The goal, yeah.
The only
but
real
if they
goal.
grew to be like relatively stable independently, even a little bit worse off, like there might be some people that would consider that a success in Russia, right? Because now they no longer have to worry about any demands from the West because the West has.
If they're able to go in completely independent.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Like how the UK wanted to be independent from Europe after Brexit, right?
I mean, that's difficult to say because there's
I
a
have tickling nose hairs. I know it's weird.
that goes to like saying that like it's effectively impossible to be completely independent.
Sure.
From one way or another, you'll need help from an outside.
Well, sure. I think Destiny's point is that like if they did learn to, survive, that they would have. It's like an emotional impact thing almost, right? The argument is like, hey, what if Russia realized that they could survive without us, even if not that it wasn't super perfectly, but they realized that they could. Now, from an emotional perspective or from a mental perspective, they are going to feel more empowered to be more independent, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Hold on a second. I think my mechanics want me. Sorry, guys. I was on the phone with the mechanic. They called me because I had to bring my car in for an oil change before I go to my vacation this week. All right, let's get back into it.
Side source.
Sure. Well, China, right?
China, exactly.
Or India. Or
But that being the case, it's very much true that like over a long enough period of time, any country is able to adapt to a conflict.
Yeah, which we don't want, right?
Which we do not want,
yeah.
but the goal is that the conflict ends swiftly.
Sure.
Which is a hopeful. It's a hopeful measure, but.
And I feel like that's kind of been my issue with the cancel culture stuff. Is that like we've been pretty aggressively trying this for probably like 10 or 20 years on certain things related to racism and stuff. And when Trump came out and he said certain things, like comments about that he made about like Mexicans and stuff, in my mind, I'm like, you wouldn't hear this stuff in the past. Bush wouldn't say stuff like this. Reagan wouldn't say stuff like this. Like this stuff is we're way past these types of statements. There's no shot. But he said it and people cheered. And I was like, it feels like there's a lot of people in this country that we're doing a really bad job communicating with because we just assumed we could like cancel and shame those ideas out of existence, but they're still there.
Yeah, and it's not just that. There's the counterweight to that too, is that it is an absolutely objective positive that we're having more conversations about different systemic issues that will have negative impacts on people, right? Especially people of color. But the reality is that virtue bullies have taken that and used it as an excuse to harass white people. And the funny thing is, I think it's mostly white people who are the ones that are being the most hateful to other white people as some kind of way to distance themselves from their whiteness. But that's not a productive conversation. So when you hear things like you can't be racist to white people, it doesn't matter if you think that that's true or not. It's not on an individual level. But the impact of that is that people feel like they're being targeted. Because like every time I've heard somebody say you can't be racist to white people, it's always followed up by saying something that is prejudiced to white people, that is hateful towards white people. And it's like, do you think that makes white people happy, or do you think that is going to start to upset them and make them, like, it's going to start to rile people up? You know, most white people, I would say, are just ignorant to racism, right? There are racists as well, but most are just ignorant to different forms of racism, right? And then when you just say, like, oh, you're racist and you're part of the problem and this and the other thing, you know, and you can't be racist, like, that's not the correct communication impact. That's not having a positive impact on the conversation, right? And so that's, like, the biggest issue there.
I think that's an interesting point. Just to go back on like the idea that like cancel culture itself is, I agree. It's a reactionary. It's a reactionary like I guess reaction. But
Reactionary movement. Yeah.
And like it is true that like but I think it's like a different scenario, because the fact that they have these alternative platforms that they can go to is what is allowing them to spur those voices.
Yeah, and so what, the implication of what he's saying is we should cancel the alternative platforms. The reality is, first of all, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's silly. But second of all, even if that was, like, it's not possible. That's the problem. And it's not even a problem. Like, that's how the free speech works. So your idea is to impose unrealistic standards. If you're saying cancel culture would work if we just banned free speech and companies engaging in free speech, and that's not helpful. I think it's fine for a company to remove somebody from their platform. That's their free speech. But it's also appropriate for a company to not remove the people from their platform, right? And so now you're trying to engage in, like, I would argue, like, almost like an authoritarian thing. And this is the implications of what he's saying. I'm not saying he necessarily believes this. But that's what it's being communicated, instead of like, oh, you know what, we need to do the hard fight, which is just have conversations with people. So
their voice onwards. I think. Do you think if they had no platform whatsoever, if that was even possible, would the issues still be inexistent?
I mean, I think people will find a place to voice somewhere their disagreements. But that question of like, what are the platforms disappeared? That's even scary to me. That is American. Like, I mean, it's democracy. We should allow some different strains of thought. Yeah. But I think the scary thing for me is that, like, as these people get pushed off and pushed out of these arenas, we start to lose like challenges to our own ideas. And I don't know why this happens, but there's a phenomenon that when you lose the other side, your side will just tear off in like this more extreme direction. And to some extent, we need, as much as I hate fucking Trump supporters, they keep you honest. Like, they keep you grounded more in conversations. We've seen this happen a lot with
it sounds like what he's saying was, we need an enemy. We need an enemy that's not, we need some kind of an enemy, or else, like, liberals go out of fucking control. I wonder if that's true. Like, if we don't have the Trump supporters as our enemy, we'll just make ourselves an enemy, and we'll just start bickering and having internal fights. Probably. I mean, you're already seeing that, so sure.
Like with the Lab Leak stuff, to where initially, I think the Lab Leak stuff, I think conservatives presented it in an insane light, as an intentional bioweapon created in a leak, blah, blah, blah. But it probably caused liberals to respond a little bit too extremely, where they didn't even want to consider the possibility. I know a couple articles have been written about maybe liberals were a little bit too hasty in dismissing Lab Leak, and now we've got, more.
Well, yeah, I mean, even Jon Stewart was like, it was probably made in the lab. And people got upset with him for that. But he's like, we have bats in Texas. Listen, I'm not saying anything. I'm not trying to get punished by YouTube for anything, okay? I believe whatever the progressive narrative is. No, but like, even Jon Stewart got heat for that, and it's like interesting. Nobody made it as a weapon to go after anybody. But like, I think the going theory is like they try to come up with vaccinations to things before they come out. And, like, that was kind of what happened. Like, there might have been a leak. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. It could have been like a bat fucked a dog or whatever, I'm just saying, I'm saying
more questions about it. I still think it's probably a wet market thing. We don't know. But those people with those questions will exist, and we keep like shooing them off. Yeah. Not only do we not address their concerns, we also don't know as much about our side. Like, I've learned a lot about vaccines and COVID and immunology just from studying to have to debate like anti-vaxxers and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the interesting. That's one of the interesting things about the accepted ideology, is that whatever the accepted ideology is, typically like the individuals who believe it have less of a reason to believe it. I know that sounds weird, but if you have a society that accepts a particular thing, they don't know, they might be right, but it doesn't mean that they will go into and like understand the depths of why they think it's okay. They'll just like kind of accept it as a truth without like a lot of information. And so that's one of those things where a lot of times, you'll see conservatives be very well researched, even if that research is propaganda level research, like when it comes to anti-trans rhetoric. and they're better versed in debating generally. That doesn't make them correct because they had to look into it because it wasn't the accepted narrative, right? So you would have to convince people beyond a certain degree from a social aspect.
A lot of people don't.
So yeah, so you're pretty much is saying that like cancel culture. Would you say that cancel culture is undemocratic?
A little bit. That's a rough statement though, because like technically shouting somebody down is an exercise of your democratic freedom of speech. Like you have a right to censor people to some extent. Like if I don't like somebody on Twitter, I can block them or not work with them if I choose to. I just feel like we take it a little bit too far sometimes. Like there are certain speakers that I probably wouldn't share a platform with, but I don't know if I would say like you're not allowed to have the platform at all, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And and you're saying that's like cancel culture.
Yeah, I think it's too far. I think we should be able to, like broadly speaking, we should be able to have uncomfortable ideas that we are forced to confront, maybe on a college campus or maybe on a...
Yeah, we should be mature enough to have that conversation as the reality. We should be mature enough to be able to have conversations about disagreements. As long as this is my big thing, is like as long as you can trust that the person that you're engaging with can engage in a conversation, without being like it can actually engage in the conversation. There are some people who are just looking to dunk on people. They're not looking to have an actual reasonable conversation. The people I've interacted with that the most in my times when I used to have more conversations with people were communists. They just have a sheet of paper that they're reading off of. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to respond in that way, right? And so, yeah, you know, and I think that there are I think like Matt Walsh is an example of somebody who is not willing to engage in like an intelligent, critical capacity. It's more about just like hit piecing people. So you have to be careful.
Platform that we're able to deal with, because I just feel like there's too many examples now of like these ideas coming out and people have no idea like how to even deal with it. I think a really good example is the Kanye stuff recently. A lot of people I realize don't have any idea how to deal with like anti-Semitism that's rooted in a little bit more factual conspiracy, right? When somebody starts saying things like Jews disproportionately control the banks and media, and it's like, okay, that's kind of true, but then nobody knows what to even say about that, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, true. That's why I love Jon Stewart, bro, because he was like, yeah, let's talk about it, all right? And then when you look at that, you look at historically, like Jewish people in other countries were bankers because it was considered dirty to be a banker. And so I think it was in Rome. And so like that's what happened. Like Jews were basically forced to, because it was one of the only jobs that they could get, because they were being discriminated against. When it comes to a lot of Jewish people being in Hollywood movies, it was just because the Jews were excluded from making movies in I think the Eastern United States at the time. So they had a different league that was more open to everybody. Maybe not everybody. Black people were probably excluded too, but you know, more people, and they just happened to be better. Right, these are those different ways, you know, that's how that comes out of place. So it's like, oh well, you come up with this conspiracy that they're like inherently like there's this magical fucking thing that exists that makes them all like that they control the world, which is just not true. I mean, Jewish people have to be easily one of the most oppressed races historically ever. So, but you have to engage with that, because if you just tell somebody no, shut up, that's not a convincing argument.
You haven't spent any time addressing the arguments.
Okay, then how about this? Do you think that some people are more immune to cancel culture than others?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And do you think in those cases where the people that are less immune to cancel culture, do you think that it's effective, that cancel culture is effective on them and not so much to like the bigger names like Trump?
I mean, it could be effective on them, but it also causes like weird externalities relating to it too. Like there might be, like for instance, people might have more radical ideas and they're actually willing to let on because they're worried about cancel culture. I think that's probably not good. So for instance, in some college campuses, conservatives might not be as comfortable like voicing opposition, which I think is damaging for all of us, because one, for the left-leaning students in class, they don't get to hear the opposition, and then two, the conservative doesn't get to have like a good conversation about that opposition as well.
Right, in a way that could change their mind. Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I think cancel culture can be more damaging to people that don't have like the alternative platforms, but then I think it kind of robs all of us of like better understandings of the issues and better conversations about the issues.
Okay, yeah. So so in the end, cancel culture pretty much roots you in like a dogmatic like thought. Like you don't really question why.
Somewhat anti-democratic. It makes you more dogmatic, more ideologically driven, more partisan. Yeah.
It's pretty much speaking without thinking. Like is that what you're thinking?
That would be part of it, part of the issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't really have too much more to say about it. So
okay. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you very much. Yeah,
cool.
So originally the sign that attracted me was the Nazis.
Personally, I don't like that Destiny isn't dunking on these people harder. That's the whole point of when people watch the Steven Crowder videos. You need to dunk on people harder, Destiny. It's not, oh, let me just have a reasonable conversation with a young person on a college campus. No, you're not supposed to do that. That's not the point of the show. The point of the show is to embarrass these young children, these young people, not children, they're fucking adults, but these young people. It's to embarrass them into submission. That's why I go to college campuses and I debate there, because I want to test my spirit against 19-year-olds who haven't really explored their political ideology or thought and come out as if I'm a winner, when the reality is I'm just smarter than a 19-year-old at 33. My name's Ben Shapiro. My name is Ben Shapiro. I don't even hate Ben. I'm just being honest, though. Let's be real. I'm going to go to college. Today we're going to a college campus so that we can debate 19-year-olds that just fucking don't have any understanding of what they think.
Long on campus sign.
Yeah.
I would honestly disagree with that, but I want to...
I talk so much I don't even know what it is.
Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So originally the sign that attracted me was the Nazis belong on campus sign.
Yeah.
I would honestly disagree with that, but...
I would too, but I'm pretty sure it's just Destiny being a little... he's just trying to get people to come and have a conversation. Personally, I mean, listen, to be honest with you, I personally think that we should ban the KKK and fucking Nazis. I know that I said before we should have conversations about these ideas, and we should have them generally about ideas, but I think that like radical extremes, like literal Nazis, people who support the death of Jewish people, and the KKK members, people who support the death of black people, those organizations shouldn't be allowed to be in the United States. But that's just my opinion.
I want to know more, because from the conversations I've been hearing from you, it doesn't seem like that you necessarily fully agree with all the points. It's just like it's like an attention grabber.
So I agree with that point. I do fully agree with the point. So my point of view is that college is the last place where you can be critically challenged, and you can be critically challenged in a really unique way because you're old enough to have those thoughts, but you're young enough that you're not like out in the world, and hopefully you can't permanently destroy your life. Although with you guys, that's changing obviously from since when I was in college. Yeah, so I would say that like college campuses are good places to have like a very challenging speaker come. And when I say challenging, I mean like somebody that might be like a far right fascist, authoritarian, Nazi, Groiper, whatever these guys are, because I think it's a good place to be able to have conversations with your friends, conversations with teachers or professors or TAs in your clubs. That is like a good place to hear like this guy says that Jews are disproportionately owning like banks and media, which is true, but now he's saying that they're trying to push an agenda on us and destroy society for white people. Is that true? I don't know. You go back to your clubs and you have that conversation. I think it's better to have it on college campuses rather than you graduate and you're just kind of like thrown to the YouTube algorithm to see what you wind up with later on, and you don't even know how to combat those ideas.
That's actually a good point too, that like the internet exists and the internet will allow people with like a niche thought the freedom or the ability to express that thought, and a lot of people will agree with them overall, because you know it's one thing if like you have one guy in your town who's a fucking crazy neo-Nazi, but then now he's got the internet, so if every town in America has a crazy neo-Nazi, all of a sudden boom, although there's probably more than that, because you know that's America, but. That's
kind of my viewpoint on it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll say like I somewhat agree with what you're saying, that we should have these kinds of conversations. I think that these conversations, as long as they stay respectful, are very healthy for the mind. But I will say, like, I want to ask, like, where would the fine line to be where it could be a safe conversation versus something that could turn violent from either side, because violence does come from both sides?
Well, I guess that would be facilitated by a school. I guess that would be the point.
I think that it's up to the faculty to figure out how to do it, not the administration, the professors and stuff. I think it's up to them to figure out what they think is the best way to do it. Violence is possible, but I think violence is part of the cost of having freedom of speech. We can say very radical things here. You might inspire people like the Buffalo shooter. You might inspire, riots during BLM. You might inspire, like, the violence can be inspired by the freedom of speech that we have here. But then on the trade-off, like, we have the ability to say and do a whole bunch of things, to create like crazy media, songs, all sorts of stuff that could only happen in the United States, really. That's just part of the trade-off. And understanding that early on in college, I think, is important. That like freedom of speech is like really important, but there are trade-offs to it. Like we get to say a lot of cool things, but there's a cost as well. That like it could be violence, and I think faculty should decide how best to deal with that without just like banning all of it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that people who are responsible for those violent costs through their speech should be punished, or do you think it's just the people who enact on the violence?
I think that it's very hard.
I mean, that's an interesting question. At the end of the day, all you can really do is go after the people who are explicitly calling for harm. Although, like, I understand the idea of like dog whistling is also a very good point too. I understand that. So
to do
I'm getting dumpstered.
When you talk about holding people accountable, I would say that in the United States, I err very far on the side of caution of not doing it directly, unless it's like a hold on, I just lost my train of thought. When you're talking about like direct incitements to violence, those should always be not okay. But when you're talking about people that are saying things that might eventually lead to hurtful things or harmful things, I think that should probably be allowed, because it's part of like the freedom of speech we have.
Yeah, but I think the third thing, though, again, is like a dog whistling thing, and that gets into a conversation where it's like somebody saying something without saying it that communicates a particular idea to some people, and to other people they don't perceive it that way. And that's where you have to like, well, what do we do about that? What do we do? What if we identify and we know that it's a dog whistle? But it's hard to prove to people that like what a dog whistle is or that it exists in some speech. And so like from an optics perspective, do you do you go after them for saying something hateful? Because people won't agree with you and they might think that you're engaging in some kind of like authoritarianism, or do we engage in it because we know it's some kind of a dog whistle, and then we like, potentially ostracize a bunch of people and make them feel like bad things are happening. You know what I mean? Like how do you play the line on that?
In the country.
I can agree with that 100%. I think like as long as you're not inciting it 100% and like telling people like, hey, these Jewish people did this on our campus and we should
Hey, who doesn't like salmon and cream cheese? That's what I say.
all like attack the synagogue or something like that versus like saying
that would be
I'm a Jewish person as well, so versus like saying like, hey, like these Jewish people have taken control of this, I don't like them, like whatever, I'm not going to let that affect me. But if it's a personal attack like on a place that I worship at or something like that, then
yeah, direct calls to violence I think should always be bad. But general speech that could lead to harm, like I think Tucker Carlson. Have you ever heard of the term stochastic terrorism?
yeah,
I would say like a lot of conservatives engage in that, but I don't think it should be outlawed or banned. Like that's just part of our freedom of speech. Like I would argue that people like Tucker Carlson engage in that type of speech, and it sucks. But like we should be able to like address or counter it. Yeah.
Okay. And then I also saw
The public demonization of a group or a group resulting in the incitement of a violent act, which is statistically probable, but whose specifics can't be predicted. Oh, so is that like, okay, is that like calling like against like Antifa or something? What is that? How would that manifest?
the other signs cancel culture doesn't work.
Sure. Kind of on the same vein as that, yeah.
I would honestly also agree with that statement 100%. I don't think cancel culture has done any good for anybody in society.
Yeah.
I think that it's really just media that blows it up, that a lot of people see it more. But cancel culture has taken away a lot of free speech and a lot of freedom for like other people, to where I think a lot more right-leaning people have to be more cautious of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Especially the ones who aren't in the 1% with wealth.
Yeah, I feel like it feels to me like whoever's in power like wants to the other side's freedom of speech. So like right now, I would say that like the left is predominantly in control of like a lot of the social medias and everything. So they're trying to over all the conservatives. But when the conservatives were in power, they like didn't want like gay people in movies or any of that shit too. Like they wanted to like over the left as well. It just depends.
That's true, man. Again, in Florida, there is, I don't know if the investigation is concluded, but there's an investigation because a teacher played a Disney movie that happened to have a gay character in it, and now she's being investigated for it, which is fucking insane to me. It's just fucking crazy.
Who's in power where, so yeah. But I think we should be a little bit more accepting of like somebody might be a Trump supporter, but like he can still work in an office with people that aren't, or somebody might be, like have some kind of extreme points of view, but like, it doesn't mean you have to destroy their life or something, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, like 10 years ago when this wasn't all a thing, like people could work in peace and like disagree with each other politically. Now it's just getting out of control.
Yeah. It feels like it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I'm a little bit more.
Somebody's asking the chat whose birthday is. It's nobody's birthday. It's a meme in my chat. People say happy birthday to me. They just haven't done it in like 3 months, and I don't know why they brought it back. It's every day they'll say it.
Conservative leaning, and sometimes I feel uncomfortable to tell people because I just don't know how other people will react to it.
Yeah.
Especially at like a more liberal campus like this.
Yeah, especially being Jewish, I can imagine. Because depending on who you're talking to, a lot of like weird Israel questions might start popping up like really quickly. So it gets really crazy.
My parents are both immigrants from Israel, so like I've been called a brainwashed motherfucker by 16-year-olds. I've been called a child killer, even though I've never
Killed a child?
never killed a child.
That's good, okay. Congratulations.
Not in the military there. I was born here, so.
I've had an abortion. Epic.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, no, I've been called some pretty nasty things for that. And like I can agree that cancel culture is really relating to that and like enabling people to like want to say those kinds of things and not
I feel like
be open-minded.
justified for it too.
Yeah, feel justified and not feel open-minded to like hear the opposing side.
Yeah. Yeah, which I would agree is a bad thing, yeah. Okay. Well, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I guess let me first ask, like, what are your views? I don't know too much about your channel.
You just came here to talk about my views in general.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a curious guy. I'm from
okay.
DC. Here a lot of like.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. I generally, I guess, I consider myself like center left to far left socially. I guess it depends on who I'm talking to. But one of the things I push for online is that people from different political ideologies need to have like real conversations with each other, but they have to have like real like critical conversations with each other. Because it seems like either one, nobody wants to be open and talk to the other side, or two, all the people that say that they want to be open and talk to the other side are just conservatives in disguise, and they don't actually like want to talk to anybody. They just want to like parrot like conservative anti-establishment talking points. So yeah.
Are you criticizing Timothy Poolard? Are you serious right now, dude? That's the weird thing. Is like Tim Pool's a conservative, and that's fine. Like, do you? But it's weird that he keeps saying that he's not. I just don't understand it. I don't understand that. I don't think I've ever seen him say a single progressive thing. It's okay to be conservative. Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of here. It's like I'm a big establishment shill. I defend government organizations. I defend our democratic organization of our party system and all that. And yeah, but I like to talk to different people and show that you can have conversations with Nazis and progressives and socialists and fascists and everybody. And that's what I do. Yeah.
No, I found that really cool. Back during Corona, I was like kind of finding out my like political ideology, and I think it lines up pretty close with what you just said.
Okay.
I would like. At first, I kind of started grinding on Omegle, just like roasting the shit out of like conservatives.
Okay.
And then I kind of found that like conversations were like the best use of my time, and
Was this guy making like Omegle content or something on TikTok? Is that what it was?
and I ended up, center left and whatnot.
Yeah, that's basically my journey. If you follow my stuff from like 7 years ago, I was like the like online left debate bro. Like I was very debate heavy, very scream people, call them retarded, shut them down.
Whoa!
And now over the past few years, I kind of mellowed out, and I'm a little bit more trying to be empathetic and understanding of where other people's political viewpoints are coming from. Yeah.
That's weird. I guess. What was this? The cancel culture doesn't work.
Sure.
What's your view on that?
So my issue with quote unquote cancel culture is I feel like instead of like trying to tackle challenging ideas in a critical manner, we're kind of relying on these other systems, especially private ones, to just get rid of all the uncomfortable viewpoints that we don't want to deal with. So rather than learn how to have difficult conversations with people that we disagree with, we kind of look to like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube to axe out the conversations that we don't ever want to have. And I feel like this is leading to a growing pool of people like gathering and congealing in these other areas, and eventually those areas are going to get big enough that they can make a living over there and survive. And now we've like totally cut off a whole section of the United States that we're not willing to talk to or have conversations with anymore. That's a really scary idea to me.
What do you think the difference between cancel culture and just like public reaction is? I guess because that's always been like a big line for me. Because I've always kind of
That's an interesting question. The difference between cancel culture and public reaction. I mean, those two things are like inherently intertwined, right? I think the difference is when you make people in the public feel empowered to cancel people based on their feelings. We absolutely have an overemphasis on what like the way people feel, and I know like I'm a liberal too, but the thing is that there's a difference between acknowledging people's feelings and prioritizing mental health in a better way versus overly affirming people's feelings and like allowing them to say preposterous shit and for them to get away with it. We're at a point now where anybody could feel anything, and oh, there we go. We're good. Like, oh, you feel that way? Well, this must be a thing. You feel like this happened to you? Then this must have happened to you. No, it's not how it works. And that's how cancel culture happens. It's over-affirmation of the way that people feel and think. And that's just a fact of the matter. You see this every day with everything. Oh, somebody was being racist to me. Were they? And then you see a video and it's not them and no racism there. Like The City by Karen. Or you see somebody like, oh, somebody groomed me. And then you look at the information and it wasn't there. And people pick up on this and they over-affirm it and they over-validate it. And it becomes very toxic. And it's very bad for people's mental health. It's very bad for the country. It's very bad for the constructive conversations on how to move forward and be better as a person. It's just wrong. And it's very damaging to the public. So
viewed cancel culture as like not real, and then it kind of became real. And
yeah, no, I agree. There's like it's hard. There's like lines where I think are acceptable. So like if you go online and you start tweeting some wild shit, and your friends are like, I don't really want to be your friend anymore. I think that's fine. I think that's okay. I can understand that. People get into arguments even with family members and Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners and everything. Like I understand that. I guess the issue I have is people seem to want to go like to the max whenever somebody disagrees with something that's even a little bit part of like the progressive dogma or whatever we would say, whatever is like the dominant like cultural prevailing narrative right now. And sometimes it feels like too extreme. So here's like an example I'll give. It's gonna be hard to draw an exact line, but like let's say that you're hanging out at a party, a college party, and let's say that like there's a bunch of white kids and they're all like saying the N-word and they're talking about like,
wait, I got a story.
Go ahead.
I transferred from URI. That was like every night I was just like bumping rap. They would just like say that.
I mean, I am myself. So that's what you're trying to insinuate there, bro.
Word next to me, it was pretty goofy.
sure, wait, when they were doing what?
And then we were just like chilling in dorms. They would just crank the N-word.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
insane.
And let's say that comes out and there's like a backlash at your school. There's disciplinary action.
That really wasn't a story. It was more of just like kind of a light anecdote. Okay.
And I think that like for that, I think that's probably okay. That's understandable. But there was the I don't remember which school this was. There was a white girl who was in a car, and I think she just got her driver's license. And I want to say she was 15. And she said something, oh, like, look, I can drive now. And then she said the N-word with a soft A on Snapchat. Yeah. It was a stupid thing to say, but she's like 15 years old. White girl, stupid shit, right? Yeah. There was a student that saved that video and waited a few years for her to apply to college. And then once she got in, he sent that video to the college.
Yeah,
that's
insane. That's fucking insane. Like, you shouldn't say these things, but that's insanely disproportionate.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's extreme to me.
Yeah.
Or like the people who are like, I don't like what you're doing, and I'm going to try to get you fired. I'm going to try to get you banned from every platform. I'm going to try to get you delisted from everything. I think it goes a little bit far. I don't know like where the exact. I guess it's hard to say like what's too far, what's not far enough. But like when people are digging up stuff that people said like 10 years ago, when people are trying to get people fired from their jobs and shit over like political speech, I feel like that's a little bit extreme sometimes, and I think it leads to an unhealthy environment where people are like afraid to like even speak out like different political views.
Yeah.
Especially when the definition of like fascist is like anybody that supported Trump. You know, I think it's a little scary.
Yeah. I honestly like everything you're saying. I'm kind of agreeing with. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, well, you were supposed to come here to disagree.
I wonder how left leaning some of these people are. Like I wonder if this is like the general perspective of most people. Like they feel this way. They feel these things are out of control. They just don't really feel like there's a place for their speech. You know, like either them speaking up and be like, hey, you know, I don't think that we should cancel people for saying the N-word. Will just cause you to receive relentless harassment. Or what? Because I feel like that would be absolutely part of it. Is like a fear of speaking up because you just don't want to deal with being labeled like a bad person if you disagree with whatever the insane public narrative is. I feel like that's absolutely part of it.
I mean, so
Yeah, I don't know. I'm also center left. I really don't know what to say. I mean, like,
okay, well,
yeah. It's been nice talking with you.
okay, well,
I don't want to like dry up
No,
the
you're good, you're good.
show. It's
Okay. Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, have a good one, man.
I saw though like the whole thing with the what's it called, like the whole Nazis.
Nazis on campus, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of see it like, I don't know if I would necessarily disagree. I mean, yeah, Nazis are bad, you know, but it's like a sort of act in futility trying to like, how to say, ban them, and that's
I wonder what people's relationship with the word Nazi is nowadays. Because for me, like when I think Nazi, I think of like legitimate, like actual Nazi that wants to cause harm to Jewish people specifically. But nowadays, since like people, especially on the left, use the word Nazi to describe anything, I wonder if they look at that word and it has no meaning or any value anymore. You know, like I wonder if that's what it is. Because there's a lot of words like that have just lost their meaning nowadays.
sense of like in our current era, if that makes sense, because it's like, it's one thing if it's like after World War II, after like some political unrest, you know, there's definitely a concern, right? But the Nazis, or at least like concerned like neo-Nazis, they don't have hold any power, right? Isn't it that more like a concern of like, I guess, what they would act on, right? I think that's probably the bigger concern, right? Not necessarily for the ideology only.
I mean, yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying, that like there were times in the United States where we might want to ban political parties because it's like right after a war or something, and you're worried about like enemy state. Yeah, sure, and we are pretty removed from that right now. Yeah, I think my biggest fear when it comes to banning like politically extreme ideas is we're getting to an area in society where we're not able to speak against them anymore. Like people aren't able to put up like rational arguments against like anti-Semitic ideas, and then what happens is when somebody gets confronted with an anti-Semitic idea, they completely freeze up and then they just like walk away and they have nothing to say.
Yeah,
and
true.
I feel like when we
That's true. And then that dunk moment goes on TikTok, and a bunch of like 12-year-old little kids are like, "Oh my god, I guess Jews are bad." You know, that's how that ends up happening. It's what a goddamn shame. You know,
when you have an environment you create like that, you foster the perfect environment for like a new extremist or thought leader to come up and capture all of those people because you are willing to talk about the uncomfortable things, and then you get like the new Andrew Tates or the whatever of the world that show up basically.
I find it interesting with Andrew Tate before. It's like before, you know, this whole thing. I've heard of him before, like in
Make sure you speak as close to the mic.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Like I heard of him before, like in 2016. I was like part of that. Like I was totally online. And I was like in middle school and high school. And I saw like what Gamergate did. You know, I was like, I got out and I was saying like, what the was this, right? And I was like, I heard Andrew Tate. Like I heard this kind of like very like some, you know, like totally online drama, right? And I thought, okay, it's just like a bygone era, right? Kind of thing. And that seemed like pop up like a year, like last year, right? And I'm thinking like, how the hell is he getting so many people, you know, especially like kids my age, you know, when I was like, you know, middle school, high school, you know, like saying objectively, I think worse shit than I did, you know, when I was like when they were their age, you know, and it's like, I remember thinking like, it's like stuff like TikTok or something, because it's like,
I don't know.
I mean, I grew up on like Reddit, on like YouTube, you know, so.
Yeah, and I feel like when it comes to people like Andrew Tate, the issue is people think that if they ban the person, they kind of get rid of the idea. But there's still like, if somebody like Andrew Tate was able to become that popular, it's because there was that group of people that would have allowed for him to do it. And nobody ever really addresses any of the things that he talks about, which I think are challenging things, right? He says some important things about women. I would agree. I would agree that he says important things about women, but people aren't really interested in responding like full on to the things that he says. They'll just like cut like a 5-second clip, say that's horrible, and then move on. But for all
yeah, I do. Again, I think that there is a pretty big group for. I mean, listen, it's one of those things. I'm not a victim, but there's a market, a very large market for anti-male sentiment. That's very dangerous, and I think it is part of the factor that radicalizes some of these young people. You know, part of it is there's inherent sexism there, of course, with some people, but then there's other things where, you know, if you're just a kid on the internet and you keep seeing every single day, you know, that men are bad, men are bad, men are bad. Anytime we talk about bolstering women, which is a good thing, it's always at the expense of men. Men are bad, men are shit, men are this. You know, even to the point where, you know, people are saying that like men are incapable of this or that. And I've seen stuff on social media that talks about how men, like women, shouldn't even communicate with their partners because it's going to be so exhausting educating them. on the way that they feel about a situation, which is a boundary thing, or it's just like an expression thing where it's a communication thing where both men and women struggle to communicate with each other because we are different, so we have different interpretations of events. And it's just like, instead of being like, yeah, people can struggle to communicate in relationships, it's like, no, it's men's fault. It's men's fault. Women are like these ultimate fucking communicators, and and it's like, wow, like it's quite disproportionate, right? And that's kind of like the biggest issue there, more than anything else. Or it is an issue, and it pushes people away. They see that shit all the time.
All the young boys that are listening to like the totality of what he's saying, nobody's addressing any of their concerns or anything. Yeah.
That's a big issue. That's what happened with the whole Gamergate stuff. You know?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it, and then like, I sort of saw people, like after I was like, oh, we should probably engage with not necessarily with the, Andrew Tate, but the people who listen to him. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I saw Andrew Tate, come again more or less. And then I saw the same people, say, no, we shouldn't engage with like the people who like listen to him. It's like, you're kind of creating another Gamergate issue, like has this, it sort of feels like history is repeating itself now. And so me being like a part of that kind of thing, like I'm saying like, instead of like being on the side of where like being affected to it, I'm saying like how other people are being affected. It's like, why,
Yeah, and it's frustrating that nobody wants to talk to those people. So like when it came to the Gamergate stuff, basically if you were on one side of it, you were just labeled like a sexist, a racist, a misogynist, a hater. And nobody actually addressed any of the stuff relating to any of the people involved in the Gamergate stuff. And I noticed for like Andrew Tate stuff is similar. Like people say, oh, I like Andrew Tate. Like, oh, you're a sexist, misogynist. So, like nobody even talks about any of the things he's talking about. And when you do that, all you're doing is creating an environment of people that are just waiting for the next Andrew Tate to come up and go follow him and listen to him. Yeah.
I think the difference though is like more or less with the whole.
Where's my TV?
What? Oh, yeah, hold it closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. With the difference in like the whole Andrew Tate and thing Gamergate is like the things with Gamergate. I remember something like of what was like some sort of like ethical concern journalism, like in game journalism or whatever. But like it evolved so fast. I don't remember if it was what it was really about. And it's like, and I hear like when I ask people to like explain it to me, it's like, was that the actual thing, or was this like?
Do you know who Zoe Quinn is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like the thing is apparently like.
Do I say the word like this much? I've been trying to cycle it out of my speech, but like I love saying like. I've been trying to cycle it out of my speech as much. Sometimes it makes sense, but I've been really trying to get out of my speech. This guy's going crazy with the likes. He's like bombing me. He's ratioing me right now.
What I remember is like saying like she got some favors over from like Kotaku or whatever, right, to review her game. But then I look at it, it's like saying no, she didn't. It was like entirely someone else. It's like.
Basically, we live in a society today. I'm sure it's always happened, or maybe it's different because of the internet now. But we live in like a society today where everything becomes like so immediately political, and it all gets wrapped up into these huge movements, especially after Trump. Where it's like if you're like a fan of Andrew Tate, you're not just a fan of Andrew Tate. You believe in like the Matrix. You believe that like the feminization of men. You believe that Trump is the best leader. You believe that the vaccine is evil. You believe that Russia should win over Ukraine. Like there's all these political ideas that you're immediately brought into just by having one thing. Yeah. That definitely happened with Gamergate a bit.
Well, I will say that like when it comes to Andrew Tate, you probably, if you're a big fan of him, you probably believe in the Matrix. Although you know what, there's probably young kids on TikTok that just think he's kind of based. But I guess if you're a devout fan, you believe in the Matrix and all that shit.
Too, where it wasn't just about Zoe Quinn. Anita Sarkeesian got wrapped up into it. Yeah. The whole feminist and gaming and like all of this, like it became about everything. And then like Gamergaters became like Trump supporters who became like politically affiliated with like far right extreme. Yeah, it's like this crazy thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and like the whole thing with like the whole Ukraine war and like the whole political thing. I think what kind of scares me, it's not as people are against it or like, oh yeah, like we're going to turn this into another Afghanistan. But for Europe, I think it's more than just like a whole political thing where it's like, I'm Pakistani, so the Pakistani CIA equivalent ISI, they supported Taliban because they were allied with the United States during the Cold War, right? And they more or less made sure like to make sure to keep communism out of Pakistan and like also that region, right? And after the Soviets fell and just left Afghanistan, the Taliban took over. It's been a mess for Pakistan this whole time because it's really hard to control an extremist that's next to your border because your country is a geopolitical pawn, right? And with the whole Ukraine war, like yes, I do think we should support Ukraine. It's more also this kind of concern where it's like this unbridled like okay, we'll give them all the money or whatever, like this sort of like
I don't really agree with. I think he's trying to say that we overly support them. I don't think that that's true. We're giving them money and supporting like an ally. I don't think it's as conspiracy-esque as he's trying to make it seem.
How do I fear? It's like early on I was afraid this was going to be like Europe's Afghanistan almost, because it's like it's like Russia it's authoritarian, right? But it's also at the same time like I support Ukraine. It's a concern that it becomes into another Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, I understand that. But then, yeah, even the Ukrainian-Russian war ends up being like people jump into these really hardcore political narratives. Like when I hear somebody say like Russia should win the war against Ukraine, I'm like, well, why do you think that? And they're like, well, because Russia doesn't have like gay people in the military. I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about?
Here, the conservatives are kind of like overly supporting. I think a lot of the pushback against trying to help the Ukraine is a lot of pro-Russia bullshit sentiment where there are people. I'm sure there are people who are like, I'm worried about the money going in, and I get that. But then there's some people who just like Putin because he's based and hates gay people. It's really weird, Either way, I definitely think that we're better off supporting we're definitely better off supporting Ukraine. They're asking for help. They are a Western ally. Our ideas are better. Russia's not a free country. They've had the same president for like 30 years. He's had a really high approval rating though, so he must be doing something right. You know, and so I definitely think that we should be supporting them. They're asking for the support. They're an ally. We should be helping them. So.
About.
Yeah.
Like everything's like so insanely political in terms of where everybody's at. Don't let my speaker get wet, Sean. Okay, thank you. But yeah, we're kind of far from where we were, but
I'm sorry.
Wait, no, you're good. So yeah, I guess to reiterate, I think political extremism should exist in college campuses to some extent because you want to have those discussions on campus where kids can like critically dissect and analyze ideas and learn how to speak against them rather than just throwing them to the YouTube algorithm or the Rumble algorithm or Gab or Truth Social or whatever else and seeing what happens. I guess.
Is actually like the whole like I guess conservative social media stuff like still a thing? I mean, like
I have no idea. I don't know. Where are we at on Gab and Truth Social? Parlor?
Okay, I mean,
it's it's floating out there. We'll see.
I mean, people love their like a negative engagement on Twitter, especially on Twitter. Like, holy crap! Like, what was that screenshot where it's like a person says,
"Well, I'm pretty sure Destiny has some base takes sometimes just for a little Twitter engagement." Twitter is so stupid, bro.
Like, oh, I like waffles, what about pancakes or whatever. I swear, I see that happen, not even political ones, even like, I'm a big smartphone guy, I love like the consumer electronics. I see that happen all the time with that stuff, like Linus Tech Tips, they got hacked by a Tesla scammer, right?
Yeah.
And a person saying maybe for the marketing, since they all use all on like clouds, like server, like software, they should use Chromebooks or MacBooks, and you see a bunch of PC guys going insane, and it's like, oh, what? Like, listen, I'm a PC guy, I love PC, but it's like, listen, a marketer, you're not gaming, you're not doing anything that uses like software from the 90s, right? You don't need Windows for that.
Yeah.
And
or it's like if people like Xbox, they have to hate PlayStation, or like it's always this dumb shit.
I mean, I like Sony stuff. I just don't like PlayStation, though.
Sure.
And it's like I think it's even past politicalization of like politics. I think it's become the whole culture war stuff has like just expanded to everything, and I don't like it. It makes browsing the internet miserable.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I think this kind of like whole thing where we're having these kind of like debates where like extremists should they be on here? It's like the issue's not the like I guess being on here, but it's like this kind of like thing of like how out of control will it get, right?
Yeah, I guess I guess the ultimate goal that I wish people would realize is the United States really only works because we don't really have like an ethnic you're not like American ethnically, right? We don't really have a long history, right? Because we all came over, or a lot of us came over from other countries and shit. So the things that bind us together are things like our adherence to democracy, that we have a lot of different types of people here, and I wish that people were able to exist alongside others and be able to have like intelligent conversations with them rather than getting mired down in these like relentlessly political circles where we have to fucking hate every side and we don't understand what anybody's saying about anything.
Yeah, I see. I mean, like, how do you think how we got to this position, honestly? Because I think it started in the 70s or 80s with the kind of what you call like, I mean, I don't know, like, what do you think how we kind of got to this place?
In my opinion, that's a way deeper conversation, but I would say that in my opinion, I think that the internet has changed things a lot.
I was going to say, I don't know when it started, but the internet is huge and propelling people's ideas and people going fucking crazy. Absolutely. It's a real thing. People think the internet it's just an exchange of information that's so quick. It riles people up. It makes people feel like things are a lot worse than they actually are. It allows crazy people from all over the world to kind of come together and have like an audience. It also gives Poppycock the ability to have a platform and make money, enough money to live, because so there are positives. All right, it's actually worth the end of the world for me to have a job. No, but even that, I don't even think it's even close to the end of the world. But it feels like it, because everything is so in your face every day. Constant stream of information. It's ruining people's ability to engage with actual reality because they're just like constantly engaging with fucking crazy shit. There's just so many issues with it. It's just fucking wild.
Got like these very sophisticated algorithms that are driven to like getting you to consume a certain type of content over and over again, and you've got like the ability to target people and get people in communities where they don't have to talk to their neighbors like more than ever before. Like a long time ago, like if you were to fuck toasters in a neighborhood, everybody would look at you as like the weird toaster fucker. But nowadays, you can probably go and find a forum like dedicated to finding like the best toaster to fuck. You get like 10,000 other people in this community, and you feel like every relentless affirmation for these beliefs. I think that part of the internet has enabled us to find more extremist opinions, people that agree with us, and never have to actually confront or deal with people that live different lives than us. And, we live in these realities where people are totally different.
Okay, so what like stuff I guess from like maybe pre-internet era, like I guess say like Reaganism was like GOP, right? Like that stuff, whatever that taken like I guess almost on steroids, like it's like the political like I don't know if I would say insiders, but like like the political elite in the country using the internet. Like I see like stuff like our Congress, like I'm in IT more or less, and I see the whole Congress with like Facebook and stuff. Like it's very frustrating because it's like that whole like the Congress asking questions. It's for one like cultural shit, and it's like to jab points, like to have people think, oh yeah, I'm doing my job, but it's like it's a bunch of old grandpas not understanding how the internet works.
Yeah, but I mean politicians are old. What are you gonna do?
I mean, not fair. Not
yeah,
fair.
True. I mean, we haven't had any discourse on what we should do about the internet in general. They're so behind on like everything. It really is old people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. that are all over the place with this shit. So
You need younger people in there for sure.
I mean, true, but I feel like the whole lobby thing, it's like how to describe, it's like your grandpa, you know, and you try to explain, and IT, I'm more or less that guy who has explained that to your grandpa, and there's no IT guy in the Congress. If not, it's probably a lobbyist, and it's very, very infuriating. Like social media, like, yeah, they should be banned off of like the government phones because it's a government phone, right?
Maybe, yeah.
You know, there could be some dangerous stuff. I mean, you know, there's exceptions like marketing or PR. That's a different story, though.
Okay.
But like, I feel like, you know, it's just kind of like, I think it's also our business culture where we use like business assets as personal, which isn't bad. I don't think that's a wrong thing. But when there's like a security reason, that you shouldn't be doing that.
Sure. Okay. Well, anything else?
Yeah, not really, honestly. Well, thank you for talking to me so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one. Well, what'd you come here to chat about?
Okay, so I guess I'll just start with the first topic that we had
Yeah,
on
go
the
for it.
board, which is real men should be more feminine. I just want to hear your perspective first.
I mean, that's just stupid. What a dumb idea. Real men should be more feminine. Like, I think that men can be feminine. It's just like, you know. Oh, wait, did they say more feminine or be feminine? Hold on.
Sure.
With the first topic that we had.
Well, what'd you come here to chat about?
Okay, so I guess I'll just start with the first topic that we had
Yeah,
on
go
the
for it.
board, which is real men should be more feminine. I just
Oh, yeah, that I agree with. Okay. I thought it meant like should be feminine. Yeah, real men should be more feminine. The way that we categorize different behaviors or attributes as masculine and feminine, like men should have more feminine attributes like empathy, and understanding and emotional intelligence and things like that. Like men should care a little bit more like that. In the same way where women probably should be more masculine, you know, nowadays. You know, there's, you know, and those are just the way that we decide to from a socially constructed idea, categorize different behaviors. So like, yeah, I think that it would be good for men to be a little bit more feminine. Like back in the day, a good dad was somebody who made money and came home and didn't really give too much of a fuck. Nowadays, there's a higher expectation for men, just like there's a higher expectation for women. You know, women are expected to work and do more now, right? And so like there should be more on both sides, right? I'm not saying traditional relationships can't exist. I'm just saying that generally speaking, this is a good idea. I think it's good for everybody to be a little bit healthier mentally, a little bit more expressive, express their emotions better in a more healthy, productive way. Which even though men do express their frustrations through anger, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, to have a proportionate amount of anger, not an anger that allows you to commit some kind of a violent act onto somebody.
I want to hear your perspective first.
Gotcha. Okay. We should have like a more prompt because I feel like I repeat a lot of the stuff I notice through these. So when I look at women over the past, like probably especially 20, 30 years,
Okay.
really since the 60s, it feels like women have done a really good job at going from being very feminine. And when I say feminine, I'll say like staying inside, taking care of children, being nurturing, providing for a household, to encapsulating a lot of traditionally masculine traits via two huge things. One is access to reproductive control.
Yep.
So that means abortion and the pill. And then two is access to the job place. They can work jobs and make their own money.
Right.
So because of
Did his fucking mic get louder, or is it just me? Am I crazy?
this, women have access to things like sex without needing to have a husband for it, and they have access to jobs, meaning they also don't need a husband. So women have kind of like done this thing where they've grown from being just caretakers to also subsuming a lot of traditionally masculine roles. Today, you have like this big red pill movement where, you know, people are trying to figure out like, oh, how do we get women? What do we need to do? And all the red pill guys are like, you need to be more masculine, more masculine, more masculine. But it feels like women have a lot of kind of the traditionally.
This makes sense. You need to be a little bit more feminine. I think that women want a strong masculine man. Not all women. Everybody has a different preference. Generally speaking, I think women want a strong masculine man that's in touch with their emotions, which is a strong masculine man that also possesses feminine traits, right? Those toxically masculine traits that men have where they bottle everything up inside them. It's okay to be stoic as long as you have a healthy expression of your you're being frustrated or upset, right? And that's where toxic masculine, like that's where you should be a little bit more feminine. Where it's like express yourself, healthy. You don't have to go on public and cry to everybody, but like you could open up and be a little upset to a partner or a trusted loved one, you know?
Masculine traits kind of covered. Like you can't really capture a woman with a paycheck anymore because she can work. And it feels like a lot of things that guys need to work on today when it comes to relationships. This is heavily anecdotal, but it has to do with things like communicating really well,
Right.
being emotionally responsive, like just being a mature person to be around that can serve as like a good like somebody that would be like you would be friends with them, not
Right.
just relationships.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I say men need to be more feminine, what I'm saying is they need to take on a lot of the roles that traditionally were just for women. Things like being communicative, like being emotionally intelligent, and they need to incorporate that into their psyche now, since women have incorporated some of the masculine traits. Yeah.
So to you, men are not already emotionally intelligent enough to be considered.
Men are emotionally retarded. Can I say that here?
Hey, stop saying bad words, Destiny. I don't like it. Yeah, men can struggle with being a little bit more in touch with their emotions. Sure. They could do better at doing that. That's more of like a socialized trait, I think.
Yeah, men are very, very bad, I think, with a lot of that stuff.
Okay, and that's just a general statement of like what things you've observed, right?
Yeah, generally, yeah.
Okay.
And then when I look at things like red pill stuff, if I think, because I know a lot of women, I talk to a lot of women, I'm involved in a lot of hookup culture and everything. If I talk to a woman, like red pill stuff, like Andrew Tate or whatever, these are like the biggest red flags ever. I've
Yes.
never talked to a woman before. Like I just need
as a woman.
I need a guy that's really into Andrew Tate. I need a guy that's really into like the red pill.
Yes.
I never heard a woman say this ever. And then to the contrary, now I get emails from
I
someone.
need a guy that wants to be a sex trafficker. That's what a lot of women say to me obviously.
who are like, I'm really worried because
Because, based Andrew Tate sex trafficking.
I was on a date with a guy and he used like the phrase like high value man, and I'm worried that he might be like into this stuff. And
Right.
and then I've had one email from one who said her relationship fell apart because of it. And these are just like emails, I guess. So maybe not, but just random things here. Yeah.
Right, because I think I just wanted to ask, because I was like, what do you think is a feminine like trait? Because like honestly,
Big
I see this
titties!
again as a woman and like having experience with other people. Yes, I think women are significantly more emotionally intelligent. I think just because of the
missed
level
that.
of maturity and also like their perspective and understanding of the world is just different because we've been, I would say, arguably oppressed. And I think that's continued into modern society. I think the fact that like me being the president of Bridge UMD was like a question for people. They were like, oh, you're the president. Why is there no male? We have no person who identifies as male on our executive board.
Sure.
So it's like, it was one of those things where I was like, I wanted to know what you thought was femininity and then like talk more about that perspective.
Even for things like even traditional things like feminine roles in like the household. So there was, I should remember the study and the name, but there was a study that asked the question of like men breaking up with women who out earn them, and it happens pretty often that when the woman out earns the man, a lot of these relationships end. But one of the things that was reported was the amount of household work that's done in relationships with the woman out earns the man. The woman is still doing the majority of the housework.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also a thing where, like, I believe if a woman makes more than a man, or it might be if a woman is either the primary breadwinner, or if the person is a stay-at-home man, he is like 5 times more likely to cheat, right? And so like there's a lot of different aspects of it. But yeah, man, chores suck. I hate doing chores. I still do them for my wife though. I'm trying to be better. Today, I did the laundry. Well, I did it last night. And what else did I think I did other stuff. I don't really remember. Anyway, I try to do more chores.
But men have a really hard time stepping into that position of like,
Well,
well,
let me just say, sometimes women are a little controlling about where stuff goes. Oh, clean the house up. Where do you want this? I don't know. I'll do it. My wife yesterday was like, I really want you to put the dishes away today, but they're special dishes. And she's like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want you to do it, though, because I don't know if you'll put it away the way I like it. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do then, That's part of it. It's just she's just in control of it, so...
out or me at least will take care of things around the house. Like a lot of guys can't even do that. And then there's a lot of concepts. I don't know if you've ever heard of like weaponized ignorance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where,
weaponizing competence. Where I get, yeah.
I want to be like, can you do the dishes? And they're like, I don't know how to. And it's like, I'll try it. And they like break all the dishes, and the dishwasher's like, oh, sorry.
Listen, it's an effective measure, and that is real though. But then there's also an aspect of it too of I think it's weaponizing competence. Where women will complain that like a guy will only do what is asked of them and no more. Right, and like this is something that happens with my wife and I, and it's just an interesting interpretation of men versus women. And so it's one of those things where my wife might write a list and say like, I need you to do this, but there might be something adjacent to that could also be done. And she might say, can you wash these pans by hand because they can't go in the dishwasher? But there might be a few dishes that could go in the dishwasher and a load could be started. But I did exactly what she told me to do instead of taking a little bit more initiative. Right. And so that's something that I think from my perspective, I just like listen to what I'm told. Right. My wife is the boss of the house, but I've been trying to do a couple more active things like, OK, let me take a little bit more of an active role into doing like X, Y, and Z, being a little bit more into it. That's where it comes down to like it could be intentional weaponized ignorance that guys won't do what's not on like a list or what's asked of them. It also might just be like, oh, we're just doing what we're told, And in a society that has historically taught men to be providers financially, that would also come with the conditioning of just doing exactly what you're told by a boss in some kind of a socialized aspect. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting perspective. Very interesting stuff going on. Something to be said.
Like dumb shit like this, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like I've seen that firsthand. It's interesting because both my parents are immigrants. They immigrated from India before I was born. My dad actually does a lot of the housework. He does the laundry because he's very anal about how we do it. The dishwasher is his arena because he's very particular about how things go. And I think my parents have set that example of like there is a balance between like the roles of a woman and the roles of a man. And my mom's worked my entire life, so it's not like I've ever seen a stay-at-home mom. But it's interesting because I feel like I've seen a rise in people who are like stay-at-home moms, and they're like, oh, here's what I do in a day, and it's like getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to take care of their child, and they never show a husband or a partner or like a spouse being there to help with that. And I'm like,
yeah. And that's another thing. My wife and I have conversations about kids a lot now because we want to have kids soon, and so we're moving towards that area. And we've discussed the different roles that we're going to take when we have children. My wife, of course, is going to get like leave from work, and she's going to be able to come home, and she's going to be able to be with the baby. And so for a lot of it, my wife is probably going to take care of the kid while she's home more. But even after we even talked about it, I was like, even after the first 2 to 4 weeks when she's still home after she gave birth, I was like, I'm going to be more active, especially because she's going to need to recover from birthing a fucking child. My wife thinks she wants a C-section. You know, that's where like her friend got one. I think part of it has to do with weight, but part of it also has to do with I have a really big head. We both have actual big heads, especially me. And like on my head ripped my mother's. My head was wider than my shoulders, and so that's a concern. But you're gonna have to, even from a regular birth, it's gonna take a couple of weeks to just recover. Like that's a huge body stress and trauma onto you. And so we've talked about that, like how we're gonna have the baby there, and like I'm gonna try to be the one that gets up in the middle of the night, takes care of the baby. You know, try to do what I can, give her time to rest. You know, obviously when I'm working, my wife could either take care of the baby or I'll bring it to my mother's house. To take care. My mother's retired. She can work for like 3 or 4 hours every day. She can suck it up. And so we have those conversations, and you know, because you don't want to be in the relationship where like the guy works and the woman isn't working at the moment. So the woman does all the baby raising. That's a lot, especially a kid that's like your first few years. You know, you definitely want a man. Men need to take more be more in there. Like I know somebody, I'm not going to be specific, where the guy is very liberal. He says, but then when it comes to the way he interacts with his wife, all of a sudden, you know, she birthed the baby, and like he's not very present. You know, he expects her to be home and cook and clean and take care of the kid, and I understand parts of that. But then when like he's home, like on the weekend, like he wants a whole day to himself where he just plays video games. It's like, well, you're the woman who just birthed your child, which is that's a very intense thing. Also didn't get a day off. You know, that baby needs to be fed every 2 hours when it's first born. It needs to constantly be looked after. It is a 24/7 job, especially when you just first start having kids. And it's like, it's interesting how in many cases, like they're really, you know, it's like you need to be more present. It's not an easy thing. As the kid gets older and a little bit more self-sufficient, obviously that dynamics is going to change. But, you know, you need to step up more and you need to be a little more present. Just making money isn't enough anymore. You know, having to take care of a kid 24/7 is a huge job. And so that's something that we've been discussing a lot, because I'm not trying to put my wife into like this situation where she's going to hate raising a child. And it's something that's like very important. It's something very important to talk about, being present in that capacity, you know? So especially with my job being very flexible, I have the opportunity to do that.
Is that a feminine trait to be the one who is instinctively responding to I think the needs of someone?
I think it depends. Without getting too deep into that, I don't know how much I honestly believe things like nurturing or like gendered. I don't know if I believe. I'm sure there's like a little bit of
like the biological.
I believe that there is a biological imperative for women to be more nurturing and men to be less nurturing. But I also think that when it comes down to it, there's also a heavy amount of socialization that will take. You know, if you keep telling people that they shouldn't have to be nurturing, of course they're not going to develop that skill. So, you know.
Aspect of it.
I'm sure there's like a little bit of it, but like I have a son, like I wanted to care for my son, like when he cried, like it made me feel bad. Like it's not like, oh, my kid is crying, like I don't give a fuck, hopefully his mom takes care of it.
Hormones were like, no.
Yeah, no, like that's crazy.
Shut up,
but the I do think it's when we talk about like traditional roles, if there's like one person working, like if the husband traditionally is working and the mother is like taking care of the child almost exclusively, whatever, I think that sometimes that delineation of work can be okay, because like one person is like earning money for the household, the other person take care of the household.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think it's something to be said that like that man should, like, if you're working a 40-hour-a-week job, it's going to depend on like each specific situation. You know, how old is that kid? How much like is going to be required? Like, I think it's a good thing for men generally, right? Because I understand trans people, you know, can have kids too, but generally, it's a good thing for a man to like give their wife the opportunity to kind of leave the house and not take care of the baby for a few hours. You know, if my wife is going to be like, I just want to leave and go shopping for 3 hours and don't want to take care of the baby, that's perfectly reasonable. You know, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom. You know, you should give them the ability to do that, because like raising your kid all day is a lot of work. So
it just depends on the amount of work being done on both sides, right? Like if a husband is working like a 9 to 5 and he has nothing to do with the house, and then the wife is like taking care of like 2 or 3 kids, that could probably get a little bit grating sometimes, especially depending on the ages. But yeah, I think that figuring out like a fair and equitable distribution of like roles in the household is really important. There are a few TikToks that blew up where I was arguing with just pearly things about that over the doing chores in the household. Yeah.
Yes.
You're gonna divorce over chores? Yes, I would. The chores are a huge part of a relationship. I've been in a relationship where like I was the one that was making all the money and the person I was with was not doing anything, and she was just playing video games all day and she didn't do any chores, and she just spent all my money. Like, yes, there's an incredible amount of resentment. You know, I was spending money on fast food every day because they wouldn't do anything. Like, of course, it was fucking insane and frustrating. You know, hey,
yeah,
don't fuck with
yeah,
bitch.
definitely. Because I
Where's
think
my
it's one
team?
of those things where it's weird because I feel like a lot of men that I know will look at doing housework as a chore and not like a thing that they have to do.
Sure.
Like, and I
Right,
think
it is a
for
chore,
women,
yeah.
it's more of like if this doesn't get done, we're not fulfilling like a space that we need.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, and I know I'm pausing a lot, but this is like obviously my wife is very has a lot of invested interest in the cleanliness of the house. Like the house to me isn't dirty. There's a little bit of clutter, but for her it's very dirty, and it makes it like it stresses her out because that environment, you know, and it's not even dirty. There's like it's not dirt. It's just that there's like shit on the floor, like there's bags and stuff of different things on the floor, and we have a lot of stuff. And like, you know, we're going camping, so there's, you know, it's just like shit like that, and she gets more frustrated by that than I do, you know, so our standards are a little different.
To do.
Sure.
But I'm just like, what would make a man more feminine? Like, would it be, is like taking care of a home just like an inherently a feminine thing?
I mean, the words themselves, the problem is there's a lot of normative baggage to a lot of these words.
Yeah.
So if you say it's feminine, it kind of sounds bad or
Yes.
derogatory, I guess.
It does sound
Which I think
derogatory,
is, I think actually goes to show how interesting our views of gender roles are. I notice this in a lot of red pill spaces that when somebody says a man is acting feminine, like it's basically an insult to compare a man to a woman.
Right.
That's how you insult a guy. You throw like a girl, you're bitching like a woman, you sound like a
Yeah, real men don't cry.
Yeah,
Shut
but
the
I mean, like
pussy,
I would just say, like
bitch.
traditionally there are like we have like feminine roles in society. Traditionally, we've got masculine roles in society. Women have kind of like done a lot of the masculine roles now, but men seem unwilling to do any of the feminine roles. So when it comes to entering relationships, I think as a guy you have to think of like, well, what's the value add here? If all I can provide is like a paycheck, but women can work, I'm pretty in the dating market. And it feels like a lot of people that are giving like dating advice on the red pill side are unwilling to acknowledge that hyper masculine shit only works if you are like the top 1%. Like if you're just bringing a paycheck to a relationship, it's not enough. If you can bring like a $500,000 paycheck to a relationship, it'll probably work. Or if you're like, you know, a 6'4" shredded alpha chat or whatever, maybe. But for the vast majority of guys, that's not going to be enough. You're going to have to work on those other traits that women have traditionally worked on.
No, I mean, that's fair. Because I think like my biggest question when I saw the topic was like, our definition of femininity and masculinity is like inherently rooted in a historical oppression of women, right?
Sure.
And like, I just wanted to know your thoughts on that, like on the progression of that, because I think as we've come into what we would, I guess, arguably call modern society, we've seen a progression, but I don't think it's really that's like I don't know that you would
I think
consider
it's pretty
it
significant.
Obviously, it's different.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like as we've, let's say, like from the 2000s to today, like what would you say that progression has been like, or at least as you've observed? Because I feel like obviously you've observed more than I have.
Well, I mean, for a while we almost had Hillary Clinton as president, right? She
Yes.
won way more votes. So I mean, that's a pretty big deal. I think. I think there was a lot of talk in my lifetime, even of like people.
Thank you for the 7-month sub us. Which reads from Z King, which reads man Uga, woman Booga. That's our relationship. Thank you very much. The traditional female-male relationship.
Obama ran for president. People were saying like, you know, a black man will always be president for a woman. We're still really far from that. I remember people like Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage. I used to listen to a lot of Republican commentators when I grew up. But
Right.
yeah, they were talking about like, we'll never see a woman as president. We almost did. So I think that's a pretty big deal.
Okay.
You're starting to see when it comes to education, women are slaughtering men, which is a problem that we probably are going to have to address at some point. But I don't know how to even have that conversation because people freak out.
That is, that's a conversation.
Yeah. There are still some areas that women haven't made too much progress in, or that much when it comes to like computer science, like computer related things.
Yeah.
There's arguably a lot of like culture around that in video games and computer gizmos and gadgets that are geared more towards men. Maybe that's why. But
Right.
yeah, I think in a lot of ways, women have made a ton of gains positively in society.
But women seem to be into different games. There definitely is a conversation to have about like the exclusion of women in particular spaces sometimes. But I also think that like men tend to gravitate towards games, or maybe it's men making the games so they like them more. But you know, like your cooking mamas and your gem exploration games or whatever puzzle. Women seem to like puzzle games a little bit more, or like not even puzzle, like fucking. You know what I'm saying? Like my wife plays like fucking Toy Blast, like I just silly games like that. Silly woman game.
That I think have dramatically changed the role that they play in the world. So much so now that like when you talk to these red pillars, like, well, if you want to find a good woman, you need to go to Eastern Europe or South America or whatever because they can't handle, you know, Western women in the United States or whatever. Yeah.
Right, because apparently we're too much.
Which I find very funny because like basically what they're saying is they're alpha chads, right? And they can't handle Western women because they're too masculine. It's like, what? How masculine can you be if the only thing you could dominate is a feminine person, right? That's not very masculine to me. If you're a real alpha masculine chad, like you would be able to handle a very masculine woman. So I'm just saying, you know, just saying, bro. Grow up.
modernized for them,
Yeah.
or less of the traditional.
Yeah, it can't be captured with a paycheck.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's actually I'm enjoying that phrasing. Can't be captured with a paycheck because I think it really does speak to a lot of things. Because like as someone who is ace, like I never see myself in that type of
Asexual.
relationship. I'm self-sustaining. I think in that sense.
Sure.
And I actually do really appreciate that you were like what can a man bring to a relationship with a woman or with someone else?
Yeah.
If they're doing something that a woman can do alone.
Yeah, which is really
I can kill spiders, bitch. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, I don't mean to be derogatory. I can frick up a mean spider. You know what I'm saying?
difficult. For a guy, the answer is easy because obviously sex is a big thing, but there's also a lot of emotional intimacy you get from women that you don't get from men.
Right.
Like when like a guy will go into like a group of guy friends, and this guy might be like 2 days from suicide, and people are like, "What's up?" And he's like, "I'm cool,"
Yeah, everything's fine.
and that's it. And then he kills himself 2 days.
I'm on a straight vibe, baby.
They're like, okay. And then a woman will go on a date and come back like, oh my god, like I did this and he did this and I felt like this and it was blah blah blah. Like the relationships that women have with each other tend to be a lot more emotionally deep and more communicative.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's also interesting because I think I have really good friendships with both men and women, and I think my relationships with all the female friends in my life were definitely like more deeply emotionally attached. And I don't know if that's born out of like the fact that I've known them longer. Also, like it also stems from the fact that some of them are childhood friends. Like I've known them since I was crawling.
I think men want those relationships. It's hard to foster with each other. And then you run into this weird thing where I've talked to a lot of women who their first date with a lot of men will literally be like trauma dumping, like, oh my gosh, somebody's here finally to listen to me and all my problems, and I want to communicate everything. And it's like, holy
It's
shit.
too emotional.
That's crazy. I remember when I encapsulated my now wife back in the day. It was a long time ago, and I was playing the Half-Life 1 remake, which wasn't working on the computer I had at the time because wasn't a very good computer. And so I got off and I laid at the edge of my bed on my phone, texting her, and we talked about social issues. And though I wasn't super educated, I made a pretty solid effort, and I was more educated than others, because it was something that I was passionate in. And my wife appreciated that level of emotional intelligence, that incredibility, that based nature. And that's it. And I fucked up my kill in this game, and that's like life. It's life now, right? That's where it's been, man. That's fucking that's the story. So.
Emotionally mature. Now we're just youngsters.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely very interesting. But I think that was pretty much all I had, I guess, to come and yell at you about.
All right. Well, hey, thanks.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, have fun. Good.
So the topic that we're talking about is
Whoa, this guy's a chat.
Nazis should be allowed on campus. And I would like to make a clear distinction. Like, obviously, you can have like Nazi-esque views and like you can talk about them on campus and stuff like that. But you have to also understand that like people have the right to like say.
Well, I do like art. And his art wasn't that bad. Imagine if he just got into that art school. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, that's really stupid. In fact, like people do say crazy shit like that. It's kind of good because like, especially when it like gets caught on camera, stuff like that, gives it bad exposure and people are easily able to say, hey, that's kind of bad. But we both know that that's not kind of how like Nazis operate. They kind of like are on the down low. They're like, oh, like they can deny certain aspects. It's like, oh, you're racist, you're a Nazi. No, I'm not. I'm here about trying to promote, Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah, sure. But that's one reason why you'd want to have a conversation with that person, because then you can make them look like a silly goose. And I think and this guy wouldn't know that, but part of Destiny's idea is like, hey, have these conversations with people so you will have the basically the weapons to be able to counter these particular narratives that are pushed out there, And that's part of it too. Like these people will have the education, these young people have the education to speak against particular social narratives.
Stuff like that.
Excuse me,
And
sorry.
so
I made it a few weeks without burping in during a video. I'm so sorry.
I have a certain experience up here at State College my freshman year. I was, like red pill,
it's not your
Trump
fresh
cap
woman?
wearing kind of guy out of high school. So like I was like trying to explore myself politically. And so I met this group of guys who were called the Bull Moose Party up here at Penn State.
Okay.
And so like
There's no fucking way.
on the outside, it appeared that they were like some kind of like libertarian group. And they're like, oh yeah, Bull Moose Party, Theodore Roosevelt, based, awesome, great. So I go to one of the meetings. And I see a guy that I recognize. He's a part of the college Republicans, and the entire time they're giving this guy shit. They're giving the guy from the Young Republicans all this shit. They're telling him that he's race traitor, everything. I was like, holy, like first meeting, immediately they're already like mask off, kind of like racist kind of shit. Like they asked me for my 23andMe score, which I was like kind of like I told them I was Irish, and they were like, you know what, that's passable, that's permissible, like not haram or anything like that. And I was like, oh my god, like holy. So I go, and the guy from the college Republicans pulls me aside. He's like, yo, I know that you're like, coming to our meetings and stuff. He's like, yeah, you need to like
Speaking on the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Just make sure.
He's like, yeah, no, you need to like know that these guys, they're Nazis, and like we're trying to like do stuff to like get them shut down. So like eventually he's like, yo, they don't know who you are, they don't know what you believe. You should go in, get names, write down the crazy shit that they say, come back to me, and we'll see what we can do. I was like, okay, cool, because I was like just got off watching like BlacKkKlansman. I was like, damn, I'm gonna be Adam Driver, man. Like I'm gonna It was
Okay, that's a bit of that's interesting. That's his perspective.
crazy, but the thing was like I eventually learned like that these guys were like carrying weapons around campus. Like these guys were like going off campus and like putting up caricatures of like black people, Muslims, Jews, and like shooting at them. Like it was literally like from the freaking movie. Like it was actually insane. And to me, it's like when those people exist on campus and they believe those crazy things that they do, they're more likely to commit acts of violence. Now, granted, group doesn't exist anymore because of the fact that, like, you know, they're getting school funding and they're essentially committing hate crimes. Like, literally, right here, Old Main, one of the members was holding a Nazi flag, took a picture and submitted it to a larger group chat that the group was a part of, and that was kind of what them in the end. So that being said, like,
yeah, I mean, I would be for the schools banning that type of ideology.
They're not existing anymore, but of course, you know, groups that like sponsored the Gavin McInnes event here up at Penn State, you know, you cut off one head of the Hydra, two more sprout up. So I just wanted to know what you think about that.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to college funding groups, I think that they can have a bit of difference in terms of who they're willing to fund. Like, I wouldn't expect a college to be allotting funds to an actual Nazi group. Like, I think that there are probably things relating to probably protected classes in the United States where it's like, we're not going to give money to a group that's like, we only allow white people here, or we only allow Asian people here, or we only allow whatever, or like we're discriminating against certain like religions or other types of protected backgrounds like that. I think that's probably okay. One of the issues I
personally think it's definitely okay.
when it comes to college campuses, though, is it seems like that mentality also extends to like speakers that groups might want to invite on campus. So if you've got like a certain type of group that wants to invite a speaker that might have said things in the past, or maybe ostensibly even holds some type of Nazi beliefs, I do think that that type of speech should be allowed to be platformed or brought on by another group. I think the biggest issue that I have when I look at kind of the big intolerances that are pushed towards very divisive speech, very extremist speech, especially on the right, is it feels like people lose the ability to learn how to handle it, like how to have discussions about it. Sure. And I feel like college campuses are the best place for that to happen. Like, there are two places essentially where you kind of like get this type of view, and it's either going to be like on a college campus where, you know, like Milo Yiannopoulos or Gavin McInnes or some other or further right extremists are going to be invited on to have a discussion, or you're going to see it on YouTube or in a Discord chat or with your friends. And I feel like having these types of conversations on campus where students can go back to like teachers and professors or in groups of students to like have discussions about it is a lot better than like you're just surfing YouTube at night and you catch some guy and you're like, wow, this guy's speaking a lot of facts, and then you go further and further down like this rabbit hole of like horrible stuff. So yeah, I think and I also think that with recent stuff that's happened culturally, like especially with Kanye West, like he says a lot of insane shit, but nobody really knows how to address it. Like if you walk up to, like, you can find, you know, an average progressive or far-left person, like, do you think we should have, you know, like far-right speech on college campuses? Like, no, that's horrible, it's bad, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay. Do you think that Jews hold like a lot of positions of power in the United States? Like, dude, they'll tuck their tail and run. They can't even have that conversation. They don't even know how to begin to address it.
I mean, but like you could say that about any ethnic, like, you know, there are a lot of Irish people in media, and then it's like, okay, well, like there's like a logical follow-through with that statement. Like,
yeah, but like, that's the point, is that I don't know about there being a lot of Irish people in the media, whatever. But the point is that people can't even engage with that. Like, there's a lot of people in this. That would be a good oh, well, there's a lot of this Irish people or whatever. Why are there so many Italians in mafia movies? That's my question. But the idea is that they can't even engage with it. And I feel like part of the reason they can't engage with it is because if it's felt like if you even talk about it, that you'll get some kind of social canceling. You'll be considered some kind of an anti-Semitic person, or even Uncle Semitic person, and people will just completely fucking disproportionately target you for anything, you know. And it's, you know, it's not good to be anti-Semitic, but it's good to address these like light points because they'll be able to combat anti-Semitism.
You can't just say it and then be like,
no, I understand, but the point is, I don't think people know how to respond to it. Sure. And then this happened with the red pill. The whole red pill movement is what happens is if you have, especially like a group that's holding power, kind of like culturally, which I would say like the left kind of has a lot of cultural power right now. If you're unwilling to address an uncomfortable truth, as soon as somebody comes up that is willing to address it, not only will they have the ear of the people that are listening to them now, well, now they have their hearts. Now they're like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you that Jews run society. I'm going to tell you what we need to do about it. And people are like, well, these guys don't even acknowledge that fact. Yeah. And these guys are speaking, you know, truth to that. Now we're going to follow them to the ends of the earth. And I think that's when I look at like the red pill stuff. I think that's where a lot of that came from. A lot of people aren't willing to talk about like men's issues and stuff, and then all of a sudden these guys pop up that are, and now they follow them like off the edge of the earth. You know?
Yeah, you need to. Well, what there needs to be is just like a group of people who are able to acknowledge all of those problems, whilst also having a point of view that isn't like far right leaning, at least. And I agree, like, to the fact that, you know, being able to hear somebody say something that is like socially and like morally reprehensible, and like, you need to hear it in order to
be able to critically analyze it. Right?
In your mind, you need to be able to construct like a way to.
Seems like this guy's kind of just he's learning from Destiny, and then he's like, yeah, you know what? I think that, and he's like saying it as like he came up with it himself. You know, it's very interesting. It is just very interesting. Jesus Christ, this fucking sucks.
Prove that it is incorrect or that it's wrong, right? So in that sense, yes. But I also believe that when like you say Nazi, right? If we define Nazi as somebody who holds the beliefs of someone like who's an actual fascist, not like
Yeah, and then I guess that's where we get down to like how do people define Nazi, which I brought up before. And nowadays it seems like the waters are muddied a little bit.
somebody who we disagree with, or somebody who might be center right, or you know, somebody who's a little bit more far right, but still ultimately is a person who does not support, you know, like fascism or not like, you know, Nazism. Like that's absolutely, like, you know, those people are fine. Like there's no issue with those people. And even if they do say stupid shit, like they are held accountable ultimately if they're able to get a time to speak here. Because, you know, now thinking back on what happened with Gavin McInnes, like that kind of was like a bad thing for the left here at Penn State. Like, it's like, I hear like the chat.
This is so weird. It's so weird that after he talked to Destiny for like 5 minutes, it seems like he's constructed this entire, like, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, you're having a conversation with Destiny that you disagree with, and now he's changing your mind on it. And the way that he's talking is as if he's like came up with it himself. You gotta think back this. I don't even know what the fuck happened with Gavin McInnes. You know, I think he made a beer or something, or a lager. Is that what it's called?
Around town, like after it happened, and all the conservatives were like, yeah, man, that just proved him right. Like they're just trying to silence him, which, you know, if they just let him speak and just say the stupid shit that he says, obviously.
Yeah, and then address it.
Yeah,
I guess
exactly.
because I feel like I've talked to Kevin a couple times. Yeah, Jesus.
You know, the sign is a really controversial statement, but then it's like talking to you, it's like, okay, yeah, no, that's like, that's a pretty normal take.
I think that's part of the issue, though, is that like I think that a lot of people do think. I feel like, as part of like a greater buy-in to democracy, like there are costs to freedom of speech, and one of those things is that reprehensible views can spread to some extent in society. But I think that's part of the buy-in that we have with our, you know, system of governance. As we've said, an average guy, 27-year-old guy that works at McDonald's, has just as much power to vote for a leader as a billionaire. You have the exact same vote. Both of you can vote 1-to-1 on who the next leader is going to be. And if we've made that agreement with our citizens that everybody has a vote, and you can vote on whoever you want, I feel like it's important to be able to have really challenging, critical conversations about points of view that might be really uncomfortable, like people being very far right, or people being racist, people being anti-Semitic or whatever, and we need to have the ability to talk with it and understand why it's wrong, rather than just take it for granted and hope that like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter are the defenders of freedom and they like ban all the talk that we don't want.
It's not bad because I said so. It's bad because I've come to the logical conclusion that it is. Yeah. I mean, like, and then there is something to be said about the people who use this idea of freedom of speech to kind of like take away accountability for the things that they say. They're like, that's the fucked up part. Like, man, they took to Twitter and now they canceled me for saying X, Y, and Z. Like some, again, like socially.
Yeah, freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequence.
Sure, and then it comes into like somebody might say something that's like not good, but then they might get a disproportionate response, and then it makes them feel justified. That happens. It's just like a weird thing. Sometimes people will be antagonistic in the language that they'll use. They'll say something that is like provocative and wrong, and then people will respond too disproportionately, which I feel like is some of the discourse around like LGBTQ stuff, where like a conservative leaning person will say something that's like really stupid, and then we have like the media or people will have an absolute fucking meltdown over it, when the proportionate response would be like, oh, you're just a fucking moron. Like when they're like, oh, they're trying to groom kids, you're just stupid. If you think that gay people are grooming kids, you're just a fucking idiot. And we should call that out. But when people have like absolute meltdowns, and I understand why some people might be a little upset by, you know, different statements, but when you have meltdowns and you have like a disproportionate one, all of a sudden, you know, things get out of control. I guess an example would be like when there are some drag shows that are around children that happen to be too sexual, and it's not, drag isn't inherently sexual. It's the show itself that might be too sexual, and then like the response from progressives is like, let's host a fucking Baby and Me drag festival, and it's like, or whatever, or show. It's like, okay, you're probably not helping your cause. You know, you're giving it too much attention. How would I rate the cooperation? I'm gonna rate it a 0 on that one. I felt like that was pretty shitty.
You have to be careful with that consequences. Like, if somebody wants to not associate with you or ban you from a platform or whatever because of something really reprehensible you said, depending on the thing, I can understand that. Yeah. But it shouldn't be like, well, you said that you were a huge supporter of Donald Trump and whatever, and now I'm going to throw, you know, like rocks at you because I don't want to hear you speak. That's probably not an okay consequence, right? Yeah.
That's not like what I mean is like people using their like. So I use my freedom of speech to say something. You have your freedom of speech to say something.
I use my freedom of speech to say that we should feed, we should eat dogs. There's a lot of them in those facilities. We have a lot of hunger problems. Eat dogs. I love that. It's just, it makes sense. Feed dogs to homeless people. I'm going to use my freedom of speech for that because I know my audience loves it when I say that. I love it. I know they love it.
And you don't have to be nice about it either,
Sure,
right?
yeah, I agree.
Exactly. You know what I mean? throwing rocks, that there can be like legal repercussions to that. And I don't know if you meant that in a more.
Well, I'm thinking of like the Richard Spencer. Was it a bike lock? The guy walked up and hit him.
No, they just punched him. I think they actually just.
Was it? It might have just been a punch. Yeah, I don't know. There was a bike lock incident. I don't remember which one that was. But
one trans activist, or I don't know if it was a trans person or if it was just a kind of a more skinny young lad who like did like the turnaround
flip
during the abortion debate. Yeah, no. So again, like no, acts of violence is terrible. You know, it happens on the left, it happens on the right.
Based perspective.
I don't know. I feel like acts of violence normally do come from the right, which is where my not only from lived experience, but from, you know, just like what I see on the media and stuff. You see.
Did you say lived experience?
The far right protesters, they're the ones who are patrolling around with, you know,
or big like shootings and the Buffalo shooter and everything. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So, but then again, you know, that doesn't, you know, you can't make like a large, you know, swathing statement just because, you know, one psycho, you know, got off of 4chan and decided to go.
You also have to be careful.
What breed of dog would I eat? Probably a dachshund, because I like me a good wiener. I like a good wiener in the mouth. Hey, what's up, Acrello? I'm just waiting for this alert to come through before I start this up again. I definitely don't want to go in there.
Zed King super chatted $5. Exactly, Papa. Progressives overcorrect for the results of the right, then the loop continues and expands and polarity goes BRRRRR.
I think it's just like people are just caught up in like this like a loop of virtue signaling towards like their own audience over and over again. You know, it's just that's why people will talk about. That's why people like these conservatives will be like, you're giving. Oh, fuck. What do they say? What the fuck will they say? They'll talk about giving, oh, fuck, I can't even think of it. Like castration hormones to kids, like it's puberty blockers, right? And I understand we're all a little apprehensive about kids transitioning young, but it's like you're being so, like, you're virtue signaling. Like nobody's trying to give kids fucking, like, hormones like that, like, for any weird fucking mischievous reason. It's that kind of shit.
Your cultural levers of power, I think, are still predominantly on the left. So, like, it's very easy. So, like, here's a statement we can say, right? I'm pretty sure research shows that most of the violent acts that have been committed,
just like saying if you can't be racist to white people, you're also virtue signaling, right? So, in
terms of like attacks and everything, have come from right-wing people. I think over the past. Since 9/11, I believe there's one big study that looked at this. I don't remember if this is an ADL or SPLC thing or whatever, but that ignores everything that happened in the BLM riots. But then the issue come up against is not so much that like for the rioting that happened during BLM, I would say it's bad, obviously. But the problem is people on the left will defend that and they'll say, well, no, this violence is righteous, this violence is justified.
Justified outrage.
Yeah, and then you run it. Yeah, there's that MLK quote of "riot is the language of the unheard," ignoring the fact that MLK was massively against rioting. And then you run into these issues where it's like, well, violence for me, but not for thee. Right. And then you're in a really fucked headspace. Yeah, I don't think it's good.
Yeah, no, and absolutely.
I think it was pretty based that after there was a lot of issues in black communities that people went and destroyed black-owned businesses because that definitely helped. That definitely helped a lot.
Violence is also different from a single individual, you know, who posts like a manifesto online and because like these mob, like it's more property destruction than it is like actual like commits of killing and stuff like that, which we can both agree is. You can always replace like a glass window pane.
Kind of. I mean, be careful.
Yeah.
There are some blacks that were like destroyed. I think there's some places like in Kenosha that are still like completely shut down forever.
Like there was like a Wawa in Philadelphia.
Like I understand the general sentiment that like things are replaceable, but like when if you're somebody with a business and your business got destroyed because of the riots, I mean, it's not magical that everything just comes back to you, even if insurance covers it. You know, with this sealer so fucking good. Even if insurance covers it, it takes a long time to get your shit back together. You lose that kind of income. It's just not practical. Like, yeah, things are things, but like things still cost money. And it's not going to be done instantaneously.
Destroy, like absolutely destroyed.
And then it hurts people's like trust in the community if they're going around destroying things like a Target, where they might pull out of the community. And we've seen Walmart pull out of stores because there was like mass destruction of the stores from the residents there. And it's like, why would they stay there if that's happening?
Now, I don't know if that was a BLM protest or an Eagles game, but like still, like, you know what I mean? Like that's absolutely true. But again, me personally, the value of a human life outweighs the value of any kind of personal property. It's
right, but that doesn't mean that it's okay to destroy that property because I'm gonna get fucking thrown because I'm rude. Because the implication that some people will take that as like, yeah, it doesn't really matter if things get destroyed, but it does, right? I mean, it matters a lot. It doesn't have to be as bad. Obviously, somebody dying is worse than you know anything else, but I mean, it's still really bad if you have your property destroyed because it could reduce your ability to live as a person.
Still damage, and it's still an act of violence. I would still call it an act of violence, but certain acts of violence are worse than others. But that, you know, this isn't even what we're here to talk about. So
okay,
yeah.
Anything else?
got all the points I wanted to talk about.
Well, good luck. Are you on track to graduate next year?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Good
things
job.
are replaceable. Something that you'd say if somebody survives a car wreck. Yeah, not a, that's true. Not a fucking riot that destroyed their entire business and their ability to like fucking do everything.
And nice meeting you.
Yeah, have a good one, man.
Curious about the sign you got with the gender thing.
With the gender thing. So basically, my broad argument is that women in the past 30, 40, 50 years have taken on a lot of traditionally masculine roles, especially related to sex, because they've got reproductive freedom and work. Like they can work jobs now and earn money. And because of that, when men are coming to relationships now, we need to offer more than just
Like,
a
they're
paycheck
coming?
and the ability to have sex with a husband and like have a kid. So we have to like do a good.
You know what else I think is you know how red pillars will always talk about how feminine it is to eat pussy. You know what? Maybe it is a little feminine to eat pussy, but that's another thing men need to do, bro. Oh, it's so feminine to eat vagina, bro. Listen, giving it good to a girl, which by the way I don't think is that hard. Incredible stuff. I'm fucking dead. Yeah. Job security, relationship security. Satisfying your partner, fundamentally speaking, whether it's emotionally or physically. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Good job at becoming more emotionally intelligent and taking on traditionally female roles like doing housework and stuff. Like these are important things I think for adding value to a relationship with a woman that a lot of men don't want to confront today. Like red pill spaces seem to be inundated with just be more masculine.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I do agree with like the rub of like, yeah, no, dudes need to learn how to be more emotionally available, have like better emotional skills, and also I think that in general, like people are not learning how to like
Tregan
be.
Films super chatted $1.99. Walmart is well store.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like Walmart, bro. Hot take. Walmart ain't that bad. It's not too bad. It's pretty. All right. It's all right.
In healthy relationships until they fuck up a couple of really bad relationships. You really do not know how to be good at it until you really cause a lot of harm to yourself emotionally.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Probably not. But
I mean, there's going to be some learning period for relationships. That's fine, right?
Yeah. The one thing I disagree with is like, what is the point of hanging on to these ideas being gendered though?
Well, I mean,
like, sure, like if that's your argument, like, that's fine. We don't have to necessarily label things as masculine or feminine. If that's your issue, like, sure. But I don't think it matters that much. I mean, whatever. They are. That's how we've categorized them. So that's just the way things are. You could talk about changing them. I don't think that's a bad thing. But also not like that's how they are labeled now. So if you're like, yeah, I just don't think they should be gendered, that's fine. Well,
I don't know if I would care that much, but as it exists today in society, we have like pretty gendered views of like roles. I guess for historical purposes, it's important to say masculine versus feminine because there was that separation of traits historically, right?
Yeah.
Masculine is working, providing for the family. Feminine is working in the house and taking care of your family. So in terms of analyzing it, like historically, I would say that like men need to take on more feminine roles because traditionally those have been the roles. But I mean, like in modern society, I would probably say we shouldn't gender these things. It's kind of stupid too.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess what I'm curious about is would you consider like, do you think that society needs to move towards like a less gendered system in general, or?
I mean, we already have, right? I mean, it's all socially gendered for the most part, except for like sports, which makes sense because there's differences between men and
forming masculinity.
That's a really hard one. So something that I think is a bit of a mistake is to dump all the traditions of old in favor of kind of like this kind of like postmodern, disorganized, like no hierarchical, no organization. I don't know if that would work well. I think there's probably a lot of old concepts that have
because it's meaningless. Like so there's two reasons why. One, we don't know if it's necessarily bad to label things as masculine or feminine, right? Like it's not inherently bad to do that. The problem is that when you call something feminine in our society, we tend to look down upon that. So that would be a bigger issue than how we label it is like what that means to label it in that way. Like if masculinity and femininity weren't bad things, or if femininity wasn't considered less than masculinity in our society, labeling them as such wouldn't be a big deal, right? But there's this fundamental issue in our society of that. But I think it's a good thing because it gives us the ability to identify in what ways things are wrong. Like one of the things I think that we should be considering as a society is that jobs that women tend to lean towards tend to get paid less than jobs men tend to lean towards, right? Like healthcare or care worker jobs, or some teaching positions. It's something to consider. Social work, and not just women perform these jobs, but these jobs I would consider a bit more feminine. And like we need to have the distinction between masculinity and femininity in order for us to advocate for empowering those. But then also part of it is just like, we don't have to move that fast. And some change is too quick for people to really operate on. We might be moving too quickly, and that might give people a little bit of a system shock and cause them to not really respond well to different changes, and that's obviously a problem as well because effectiveness does matter.
A lot of power in them that are explanatory, that give us guidance, that are probably important to us. Gender might be one of those things that having some sort of different gender view of like men and women like gives us some kind of like rail to be on, to ride our little subways on. It helps us like organize the world and make sense of things. And I don't know if it's easy to just toss all of that.
I'm not saying it's got to be easy. I mean, like I would say that like a lot of people just struggle. Like I'm not even talking about like the transgender people, but I think everyone kind of struggles with gender at least a little bit in their life.
A little bit, but I think gender probably also gives you a lot of good feelings too. There's probably a lot of like good gendered, like even for trans people, right? The idea of like gender euphoria is something you talk about when they're expressing correctly.
I might get flack for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I do think that cis people also experience gender euphoria as well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, of course. Yeah, if a guy like goes, if he's lifting.
Why would you get flack for that? Did you really think you're going to get flack for that, or is that like I know it's a hot take, but cis people have gender euphoria too. I know that would make sense. That would be a trans affirming argument. It's just saying that trans people have the same thing. We're all the same. I don't know why that would be a controversial take in any sphere, but okay. My favorite is that we're focusing only the fucking ranged people, the melee people. Anyway, yeah, okay. Cool, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
At the gym, you got a huge fucking pump. You look in the mirror, you probably feel good about yourself. A woman in a really nice dress, really whatever, might feel good about herself. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess what I
holy fuck, I got tossed in the middle
I'm
of the
curious about is like do we really need a really like an institution of gender to still access those like positive feelings and those positive effects? Like
you just said that cis people engage in gender euphoria as well as trans people, and now you're like, what's the point? I guess we don't need it, but it's just not necessary to move that right now.
Is it
personally?
necessary?
I mean, like I think no, I don't care that much, but I think a lot of people do. I kind of view it similarly to some extent like religion. I'm a very big atheist, and I don't like religion. I think it's cringe. But there's a lot of value that comes along with the institution of the rituals associated with and the community building aspect of religious movements. A lot, and I think tossing all of that has been kind of harmful for society. You don't have like a central place where you gather every Sunday to meet with community members, get some sort of moral leadership. So yeah, there are going to be things where like religion I would say is cringe, but there's a whole lot of external value that's provided by religious movement. Same thing with probably concepts of gender too. There's probably a lot like packed in there that kids can immediately identify with that make them feel good about themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean like there is I think a tension, especially when it comes to marginalized people. I mean like I'm non-white. That's really all I can say.
Okay.
Okay. And there is like a tension between like, okay, it feels good to like have an identity. It feels good to be like, okay, I'm able to find community in some of these things that like I identify with. Like I like being a dude. Like dudeness feels pretty good.
Sure.
Like how do I not like harm people with it? And like, is it possible to like move past a system of gender, but also still maintain like those positive effects? And what I also disagree with is like, I don't know. I know that you consider yourself like being like.
Obviously.
I think we could have taken that 3v1 or 3v2 to be honest with you. I think it's kind of a pussy.
One thing that I know comes with that is I know a lot of liberals and a lot of people that are focused more on electoral and like more like this also goes for like hardcore Marxists as well.
Hey, you just recently subbed. I don't really like this type of content, but but your personality makes it easy to watch. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. I like that. Thank you.
Purely materialist politics are not good at critiquing or reforming things that have like social power, and this would be that. So
potentially, yeah. I mean, it's an important thing to talk about. Like liberals will fixate on like hyper individualization, and then sometimes can go down kind of these weird consumerist paths, where it's like acquisition of material goods is supposed to make you happier, and everybody needs to be like their own little island. When in reality, like there's going to be some.
I love Loungefly. I'm just inting at this point. Holy fuck.
Social organizational concepts that probably make us feel good about ourselves, like gender or religion or spirituality or stuff like that.
In the same sense that like you are supposed to like we're. I've watched enough of your stuff. You are a dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're dudes.
Sure.
There are expectations of like being a dude.
This guy seems so scared. We're dudes. I think. I hope nobody's watching this right now. Yeah, we're guys. That's cool. I feel you.
Like, yeah, no. You're supposed to follow it. If you do, feels good, right? And yeah, being rich and having possessions is also one of those as well. I guess what I am confused about is like you say you don't really care about gender. You don't really care about like these systems. So then, like, what do you do about it if you don't care about it?
I correct me if I'm wrong. I think that he's saying he doesn't care about the existence of the gender systems. The issue is the way that we perceive those systems, right? Like, like men and women exist. That's cool. That's not a problem. Masculine femininity exists. It's not a problem. The problem is that people look down on femininity. If you look at a woman and she's a
Tregan Films super chatted $4.99. What's the point of destroying gender labels when people want to be those labels? Am I just not understanding this?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. The destruction of labels is like a silly thing. there's no reason to do it. What we need to do is we need to destroy the stigma around femininity more than anything else. Think about it. If you're a woman and you're feminine, that's what's expected of you. Masculine women, though, are also like looked at as a positive thing. People don't usually shame women for being masculine, not nearly as much as men for being feminine. Masculine men obviously is good, but feminine men, that's considered a bad thing, right? It shouldn't be, right? And so, like, you know, it's looking down on femininity. It's okay if women who are supposed to be feminine, it's okay if they are masculine, but men who are supposed to be masculine, it's not okay if they're feminine. And that's one of like the big issues there. We really shouldn't be focusing their fucking tank, but hey, go off.
I mean, it shouldn't bother if you truly don't care, right?
That's true.
I don't mind guys having really gender roles or women having really gender roles. I guess like in my ideal world, the gender roles would still exist. We just wouldn't judge people so harshly for not following them. It's like if you feel like a lot of euphoria from like getting shredded as a dude or from accomplishing something, I guess whatever would be traditionally feminine, having a family, taking care of their family as a woman. Like, I think
or
that's great.
if you get a lot of euphoria out of dressing like a femboy, that's fine too. God bless.
Soup Bro just gifted 5
Wow,
memberships.
thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs, brother. I appreciate that, Soup Brother. And also, thank you so much, Shriek and Phils, for the donations. You give me too much money, so you have to stop, okay? Or I'm going to ban you from this. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to ban you. Thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs, Soup Bro.
Right? But like if guys want to do the nurturing thing or if women want to do the bodybuilding thing, I think that's great too. Yeah, it's just a little bit non-traditional. Yeah, I don't think having the categories is bad.
Women doing bodybuilding just gives you very large
Paradoxical
clitoris.
became a member.
I gotta skip through these because these are the donated subs that are going to go off. It is true, though. Because usually you take steroids if you're a bodybuilder.
It's just when people get really judgmental, if people don't rigidly adhere to the categories, that it becomes bad.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I agree with more or less all of that. I mean, like, I also...
Just
I'm
gifted 5 memberships.
Jesus Christ, thank you so much. I appreciate the memberships. Thank you. I thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now stop.
Nina Blue became a member.
Stop gifting memberships. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Curious as to what you'd say about this. I would consider myself a gender abolitionist.
Okay.
I'm not sure, like... Would you agree with that?
The only issue I have with gender...
No. Like, who cares? It's like a waste. Like, I don't think that there's any reason to...
Maggie C became a member.
Polished Chamber. Thank you so much. These are the announcements from the ones that were just donated. Thank you.
Abolitionists, it seems like there's a lot of people that get a lot of like good feelings from gender.
Yeah.
It feels hard to want to like just toss that category completely.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. I like hitting the gym. I like picking up the heavy things and putting them somewhere else. It gives me a lot of serotonin, and that is a gendered thing, but like, I'm still going to enjoy it just as much without it being gendered.
Sure, but would everybody? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Like, what's the point of fight? Like, what is the point of fighting the fight of abolishing gender? Like, there are a lot of people who feel good about being men and women. Probably more men feel good about being men than women feel good about being women, because I think that there's this like epic mythology to being a man historically that's been like you're the dominant badass that goes through some kind of a hero's journey and you become amazing and incredible and you're the best and you know all this other stuff and you're powerful and you're masculine and you're incredible. And then when it comes to women, you support that guy, you know. And so there's probably more positive feelings with being a man than a woman. But who gives a shit, right? Like the abolishing these. For what reason? Let's abolish the stigma behind them, you know?
I don't know either, but also...
Would I ever do a meet and greet with my fans? Maybe. I might meet up at like a Chuck E. Cheese or... No, not that. That's a silly place to be. I want the pizza, though. We can meet up at the... at like a White Castle. Or a buffet. Okay.
It just feels like
for 3 people to show up because, you know, I mean, people like me, but I'm not that popular.
one of those categories that's existed for, it's like religion. Like there's probably some part of our brain that's wired to like want that particular thing. There's some space in our head that gets filled with really good feelings when it comes to worshiping a higher power, when it comes to having these like gendered expectations. And it feels hard to strip all of it and expect every single person to be on board with that. There might be some people that are okay with it, but it feels like in general, they're probably pretty guiding for people. But just my feeling on it.
That's fair. And I mean, like, yeah, no, they're like, you do still have gender euphoria. That exists.
Yeah.
I honestly,
I have God.
I'm having, because I know this is supposed to be like kind of a debate. But
Sure, I mean, sure. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, was he trying to just debate Destiny for like the sake of it? Because that's what he thought it was supposed to be. Okay.
Do you particularly disagree with anything I'm saying? I could definitely bring up some takes you're not going to agree with, but they're not related to
Yeah, I mean, you can come back up later if you want. We'll see if anybody wants to say yeah. Cool.
Okay. Cool video.